What's the most effed up thing you did in a sleepover? I peed on my friend's couch during a sleepover. I was 10, kinda old to pee the bed. I know. I woke up in a panic of course, but discovered the couch cushions weren't sewed to the couch and they were identical on both sides. So I flipped that shit, changed into a spare pair of shorts, and went to sleep. A year later while I was at that friend's house, his mom discovered my huge, yellow piss stain on the bottom of a couch cushion. Of course she didn't suspect me. My friend's little sister took the heat. It was me, Mrs. Schofield. I pissed on your couch and let it soak for a year. Walked home while everyone was asleep. Didn't tell my friend, didn't tell their parents, didn't tell my parents, just crawled out a window at my friend's house and crawled in a window with my own. Went to bed. Not a single person looked for me in the morning. I had a sleepover at a friend's house, preteen boys, so we were stuffed in one little bed. I got a nosebleed, but slept through it for about an hour. I noticed eventually and got up to tend to it. My friend woke up while I was in the bathroom to what looked like a scene from a horror movie. I did not get a second sleepover.
I found webcam footage of my home online, but something was really wrong with it. I first heard about these webcam streams a few years ago while watching one of those creepy things on the internet videos on YouTube. Of course, having knowledge of this only sparked my curiosity, so I ended up doing a bit of Googling until I managed to stumble upon a few webcam live streams. I just want to say, that for the record, I'm not like obsessed with these or anything. To be honest, I find them more creepy than I do interesting, and I never watch more than a few seconds. It's just one of those things that draw your attention to it, you know? I quickly found out that there were basically two different types of webcam footage, one where the owners were aware that they were being watched, and one where they didn't. I stuck to watching ones where the person or people involved were aware of an audience, and it started off with me watching a couple of minutes of weird footage a day, or just whenever I got bored or needed a break. I watched the webcam for the Northern Lights a few times and jumped from a few less interesting ones. This morning, I was working on a final paper for one of my online classes, when I decided that I needed a break. There's only so much you can write about world literature before you inevitably need to distract yourself for a bit. Since the paper isn't due until tomorrow night, I figured I at least had a few hours to kill. First, I started by browsing YouTube, but I found nothing that sparked my interest. So, I decided to hit the webcams next. I browsed through a few sites, clicking on a few, and exiting the feed in a matter of seconds. Like most things, I was starting to get tired of this. I needed a new pastime. I decided to skim through a couple more feeds until something further down the page caught my eye. This feed was titled Oblivion, and the reason why it caught my eye was because of a painting that was visible off to the side of the screen. It was my painting. It was one of my own pieces, which was currently hanging in my bedroom. In fact, when I clicked on the feed, I realized that it was, in fact, my bedroom. I wasn't in it, of course. Currently, I was sitting in my kitchen. I was a little bit confused at first because the only webcam that was in my home was the one on my laptop, which I had with me. I stared at the feed on my screen, trying to figure out where the camera was located in my bedroom. It seemed to be off to the left side of my bed, where the window was. As I was about to get up to go investigate, the footage cut to black, before settling back in on a different picture. Now, my living room was on the screen. I glanced around the frame, confirming that it was my living room. This time, it seemed like the camera was placed higher up, like in the corner of the ceiling. Again, after a bit the screen glitched before settling on the next room, the kitchen. This view wasn't coming from my laptop either. In fact, it was coming from somewhere off to the right side of the room. I slowly glanced in that direction, but there was only a wall there. I looked back at the feed and that's when I noticed something strange. I was in this room, obviously, but the me on the screen wasn't doing the same thing that I was doing. In the footage, I was standing in front of the stove, stirring a pot of something. I studied the screen and noticed that I was even wearing different clothes. I kept glancing from my laptop to my kitchen. What was going on here? Was this some kind of prank? I scrolled down a bit to see the timestamp. Tuesday, May 7th, 2019. The screen changed room again, but I was too distracted. How was it possible that I was watching a webcam feed from the future? I refreshed the page a few times, but the time remained the same. Tomorrow at 1:23 p.m. The last time I refreshed it, I saw the screen change to footage of the back door. I watched as three people dressed in black with ski masks over their faces opened the door and went into the house, each one of them waving to the camera as they broke into the house. The footage switched once again to me in the kitchen. I watched as the people came from behind me. One of them hit me in the head with something, while another moved the pan from the stove, and together, they shoved my face into the burner. I watched myself struggle as they appeared to laugh. Then, they pulled my face back. Due to the angle of the footage, I wasn't able to see the result of the burning, which I was glad for. I kept watching though, as they proceeded to take turns hitting me on the screen. After a while, I fell limp, and they let me collapse on the floor. I watched as one of them started to grab me by my arms, and the second one grabbed my legs, while the third one walked right up to the camera. I watched as he reached for something out of frame. He appeared to pull something out of his pocket. A notebook. He flipped through the pages, showing me the writing on each one. This was when I finally noticed that the feed had no volume. We know you watch. Therese, no way to stop. We are coming. Time to die. After the last one, the camera feed turned off. I grabbed some stuff to take with me, including some clothing, cash, and some snacks. I called an Uber and I'm currently on my way to a motel. I'm going to leave my phone in this Uber, in case I'm being tracked or something. I'll try to buy another cheap phone for updates, but there's no guarantee on that. I don't want to spend all my money so fast. I'm not sure if running away will work, but I have to try. I don't want to die.
I, 28F, broke up with my 29M boyfriend because my brain was viewing him as a stranger. I love my boyfriend deeply and I miss moments that we had. We were focused on marriage and leading up to it. Throughout the relationship, after we became official, for some reason he didn't quite feel real. Not in a good way. Calling him my boyfriend didn't feel real. It was like there was a glass wall separating me from him and I couldn't break it. I ignored this feeling. 4 months ago I had a panic attack and what followed was 4 months of hell. My boyfriend's mere existence was causing me anxiety. At the start when we were together it would go away and I was anxious to leave him. It was worst when I was alone and thinking of him, but then it consumed the relationship entirely. To the point where he became a stranger, it felt like I couldn't comprehend the fact we were together. He was kind, supportive and said all the right things. As it got worse, I just felt numb around him or anxious. Now we're broken up, my brain still feels like the relationship never happened and him a stranger, even though I cry all the time over him once the numbness wears off. I have struggled with my identity and anxiety for years. I just want to feel connected to him and not like he's not real. I feel like I'm going crazy. I've spoken to 2 therapists. Any advice or similar situations, PLS?
My sister rizzed up my girlfriend and scared her. I've had this account for a bit, but I prefer lurking instead of posting. My sister Haley, 20, not real name, is a very open and flirty person. She's never put a label on her sexuality, but she has said she's attracted to everyone. Ever since we were in high school, she'd often flirt with girls I was interested in. She'd also flirt with my friends when they'd come over to hang out. Sometimes Haley would even come into my room without knocking just to talk to them. It was very uncomfortable and some of my friends even stopped coming over to my house because of it. This made me really angry and I told our parents, 45M and 42F, but they'd always say I'm being homophobic and to leave her alone. So she'd always get away with it. A few months after she graduated, she moved out of the house and I haven't had to deal with her flirting with my friends anymore. 7 months ago I met my now girlfriend Layla, 18, and we really hit it off. We've been together a little over 4 months. One thing to note about Layla is that she's really shy, so she's never voices any concerns until after the fact. Well, I really wanted her to meet my parents, so we set up a quick dinner at a nice restaurant on Tuesday night. Without even telling me, my parents invited Haley, who was almost 30 minutes late. For the better part of the dinner, she would constantly flirt with my girlfriend. She'd give Layla compliments about her clothing, body, facial features, and even offer her number multiple times. My parents would just laugh along with her antics, saying it's just how she normally is. But I could clearly see Layla was uncomfortable, so I paid my side of the bill and took her home. When we got to her house, I asked if I could spend the night and she said yes. And that's where I've been for the past few days. My parents and Haley have been blowing up my edit phone, calling me all sorts of names, which has me thinking I was in the wrong. I haven't answered any of my sister's messages, but I told my mom where I am. When I asked Layla about it, she said the compliments were nice at first, but she got uncomfortable. So am I the a-hole for making a big deal out of my sister flirting with my girlfriend? ETA, I didn't put my reasoning, sorry. My parents think I'm an asshole for ignoring my sister's messages, and an even bigger asshole for walking out of the restaurant. They say I was entitled and rude. Does this make me TA? My sister rizzed up my girlfriend and scared her. Friday night I messaged my mom and dad to let them know I wouldn't be conversing with them unless Layla was given an apology. Up to this point, that still hasn't been received and I don't think it ever will. I also let them know I'd be stopping by on Saturday to pick up my things from the house. Well, Saturday morning I go over to the house and bring my girlfriend's dad, who we'll call Carl, to help me. Sitting on the porch is my sister, who tells me immediately she wants to talk. Anyways, we go inside and sit down, which is when she says she has to tell me something without me freaking out. Basically, in a much more dimmed down version, my sister tells me she has had feelings for me since high school, which is when I started going to the gym and slimming out a lot more. She said the main reason she flirted with all my friends is because she wanted to divert her attraction somewhere else. According to her, this is also the reason she moved out so quickly, because she couldn't stand being around me and knowing she couldn't have me. I left. I didn't get any of my stuff and honestly I don't know if I'll go back to get it. I blocked my sister on everything as soon as I got back to my girlfriend's house, and my mom keeps messaging me telling me to apologize for walking out again. I don't know how to feel. I'm absolutely disgusted. I feel like throwing up all the time and I'm not sure how I'm supposed to get up and go to work tomorrow like everything's normal. I haven't told my girlfriend or her dad yet and I don't know if I'm going to. I have no idea if my mom or dad knows, but even thinking about it makes my head hurt. This is so much worse than I thought it was. What the F? I know a lot of people might start commenting about how this is fake and I don't really care. I wish it was. My girlfriend confessed to having feelings for my sister's husband. My girlfriend of 6 months just admitted to having feelings for my sister's husband. I'm confused and hurt, but her statement just made sense of all the weird crap that happened in the past couple of months. I remember when I first brought her to meet my family, my brother-in-law didn't come because he was sick. My sister kept talking to his sister on the phone to check in on him. I remember we were talking about him and she just stared. Second time she visited, my brother-in-law came, and I remember when I stood there with my girlfriend next to me waiting to greet him, I looked at her and something seemed off with the way she was looking at him. The rest of the evening, she kept to herself and avoided us. Third time she visited, I noticed that she started dressing up more nicely, putting heavier makeup, a ton of perfume and so on. I noticed a lot of strange behavior all around. Plus she seemed distant and refused to let me hold her hand when we were all sitting talking in the living room, including my brother-in-law. I then found out that she started visiting my parents' house randomly without me, probably hoping to see him there. At first I couldn't find an explanation, but yesterday, she broke down and said that she was no longer sure about us and admitted to having feelings for him in the same breath. I blew up at her. I told her to stay the F away from my family after she said that she's going to find a way to tell him. We had a fight and I kicked her out. I feel so dumb right now, I don't know what to do, maybe warn my sister. I feel like I brought this on my family and my now ex-girlfriend is threatening to make a move. My girlfriend confessed to having feelings for my sister's husband. After my ex and I broke up, I went to my parents' house to fill them in on what's going on. I was stunned when mom told me she already knew. I asked her to explain and she told me that she noticed my ex's strange behavior after she started visiting alone and asking lots of questions about my brother-in-law. My mom said she somewhat knew my ex was behaving kind of weird at the very mention of him. I was urged to not escalate things and just block her and move and not tell my sister or brother-in-law. I was stupid and listened to their advice, and 2 days later, my sister contacted me saying my ex showed up multiple times to her home but didn't mention anything and said she visited to chat with her. I freaked out and knew that I needed to tell her. I told her to not let her into her house anymore and arranged for us both to meet at my parents' house. My parents kept trying to talk me out of escalating things because they said my sister may not take this lightly and might get physical with my ex. My sister arrived and I told her what happened. She seemed to be in a state of disbelief and it really took her some time to digest what I told her. My parents tried to downplay it because they didn't want my sister to do anything irrational and out of anger. I apologized to her and told her that I had no idea how things turned that way and that what happened was too much for me to take, but I didn't want this to escalate. My mom suggested we let it slide and move on and not even tell my brother-in-law, but my sister got into an argument with her telling her to stay out of it, then left. The very next day, I got a call from my mom screaming saying my sister beat up my ex after she showed up to her house and refused to leave before seeing my brother-in-law. Both got arrested and this is when my brother-in-law understood everything. He's mad at me and refused to speak to me when I met him at the station to support my sister and give my statement. My mom said I'm the reason my sister was taken in and I haven't seen them in days. I don't know what they're gonna do. I wanted to file a restraining order but got told I won't be eligible to get it. Not only that, but my ex is the offended party here and me and the family basically owe her. My brother-in-law wants to see me tonight to have a one-on-one talk about the whole thing. Honestly, I feel ashamed I brought a legit stalker his way and got my sister into trouble with the police because of my ex. They got enough to deal with, they don't need this crap on top of it. I'm losing my family because they think that I hid the fact from them that my ex, now sister's husband, is abusive. I met my ex 4 years ago and I at least was madly in love with him. For 2 years I was blissfully happy until I took him home for Christmas and I caught him making out with my sister. It devastated me. My ex tried to apologize and kept trying to get me back, but I didn't want anything to do with him anymore, and 3 months later, my sister and he were expecting their first. Now they're married with 2 children. My family forgave them eventually when children were in the picture. I kept my distance, but I have met them at the occasional family gathering. I still feel hurt by my sister, but other than that, I'm good. Last weekend, my mom asked me to come home for something urgent and my dad was there too. They told me that they were disappointed in me for not being honest about my ex being abusive. I was shocked, but my mom told me that he is very abusive to my sister. That's when my sister came to my parents and I saw her face and cut lip. I was shocked and I really couldn't say anything other than that I never knew. My sister became very upset and started yelling at me, asking what the F I meant by that. That I was so much better than her that he didn't hurt me? I said no, but no amount of swearing that I didn't know and that he must have hidden his true nature. My mom told me to leave and that she was very disappointed. I have cried every day now, remembering my sister's face. But I just don't know why this happened to her. He was so very kind and gentle with me, but I can't explain why he was that way. I don't know how people like him work, but according to my sister, if he is abusive once, then he is like that all the time. I have no experience with people this way. I couldn't answer her. He has been like this to her since the beginning of their relationship. When I calmed down, I texted my mother because she wasn't answering my calls that my sister is right. And abusive people are just like that, but that maybe the circumstances may be different. My sister is younger. I knew that some men show their true colors after marriage, or after children. My relationship with him wasn't of the same nature. I tried every explanation, but this just seemed to trigger her further because she texted me back that I'm a liar that hid the truth from them instead of warning my sister. She asked if I thought I was better than my sister not to have been mistreated by the same man. I was shocked. Like it is about the woman? Better women get abused less? I couldn't believe what I was reading. I texted her that she was disgusting to say something like this, but I regretted it so much. Now nobody from my family is talking to me, not even my father who I talk to on a daily basis. Therapists, what's your biggest I know I'm not supposed to judge you but holy crap moment? When I was a teenager, I lived in a very emotionally and mentally negative household. I know people don't take that stuff seriously, but it was so bad that I was later diagnosed with PTSD from a psychiatrist. Anywho, my mistreating parents and I got in a verbal fight in the car. My stepdad stopped the car and told me, "Get out, we're leaving you on the highway." I wasn't scared because I knew I could just call the police, say I was an abandoned child, and they'd get in loads of trouble, so I said sounds good and got out. My mom then came out and started attacking me. I refused to get back in the car after the attack, so my stepdad got out, dragged me by the hair, called me bipolar, and threw me in. They made me see a therapist. They told her that I jumped out of a moving car and then I attacked my mom when she was trying to help. This therapist didn't believe anything I said and tried getting me to take bipolar meds. I knew I wasn't bipolar, I was being mistreated, and I knew that the anger and sadness I felt was normal for my situation. She glared at me and said, "You're not nearly as smart as you think you are." I refused to say a word in any of our therapy sessions after that. I would just go in, sit down, and she'd make snarky sarcastic remarks for a few minutes then dismiss me. She wasn't trying to help me, she was trying to help my parents. I moved out when I was 18, went to college all on my own with no financial help from my family, got a job and left the country to be as far from them as possible. I'm on antidepressants for my PTSD and luckily the therapists I've had since my teenage years have been nothing like that horrible woman, but it still upsets me deeply thinking about it. Who's the smartest criminal you've ever encountered? I worked with this one guy who had a lengthy record. He had a system for getting released if he got caught. After committing a crime, if the police were in pursuit and he knew he was about to be cornered, he would act insane. His girl would play along with it telling the police that he was off his medication. The police would arrest him but then send him to a mental ward with papers instructing the ward to release to police once he was cleared. Once he was in the mental ward, he would cause a distraction that would make the person attending the desk with the file cabinet to leave said cabinet. He would then crawl to the file cabinet, look for his release to police papers, and then would literally eat the papers. When the psych evaluators decided that he was stable enough to be released, there would be no instructions to send him to the police, and he would be released to the general public. He did this about 10 times until police officers noticed him back on the streets. This stunt forced the state to change their procedure for detaining mentally unstable suspects. I tried to fart in my girlfriend's face while she slept. It was the worst mistake of my life. To this day she has no clue. I was living with my then girlfriend and roommate in some little rundown apartment. Now for whatever reason this day me and my GF just kept getting into these stupid petty little arguments over the smallest things. I'm not a malicious man. But what proceeded to happen is probably the funniest thing that's ever happened to me. My girlfriend decided to go to bed and me and the roommate stayed up. We smoked a little and started watching Z Nation. The whole time I was stewing on how to get back at her for being such a bag of limp glizzies. So in my stoned, stupid, adolescent mind I thought, oh, I'll just fart in her face while she sleeps. Yeah, I get it, that's stupid and childish. I was 18, what? So I walk into my room where she's laying on the bed, sound asleep. I strip down, now I'm butt naked. I spread my cheeks and put my hole practically on her nose. I'm a big boy, I'm 6 feet 7 inches and 275 pounds. My farts can shake objects if I'm sitting directly on them. My mom used to call me Pumbaa because of how I could clear out a room with a violent butt bomb. It was truly a gift. I contemplated the decision for a second. I understood the severity of the situation. This gift could be so devastating that she just breaks up with me, but I had to see it through. I was fully squatting. It was too late to turn back now. I was committed. I spread my cheeks and released the gnarliest fart right in her face. It was a work of art, but something was off. It didn't feel right. It always felt and sounded more wet when I didn't have my underwear to muffle the vibrations. This was different. I never think I'm in the wrong. Help me decide if I was finally wrong. It's been a while since the events I'm about to talk about have happened, but it weighs on my mind every night. I'm still hurt, angry, bothered, whatever this feeling is. To sum things up, my sister-in-law let us live with her/her family when my husband and I got evicted. I was pregnant and recently laid off from work at the time. Before having our child, I helped around the house, kept our room clean and did all the normal things someone living in someone else's home would do, but, after giving birth, I fell into one of the darkest places I've ever been in. In my perspective, we were homeless, just had a child and I felt absolutely useless. I fought suicidal thoughts every night. I heard voices for the first time in my life. I also didn't have the energy to clean like I did, let alone after myself, so I just stayed in our room. To help the useless feeling, I got a gig doing food delivery that I could do with my newborn, and I did that all day between dropping my husband off at work and picking him up. When I was at home, I felt as though I was walking on eggshells. Everything I did at that point got my husband yelled at by his sister. I floated through every day doing the bare minimum for me and everything else for the baby. Our room got so dirty. Take out trash in a trash bag on the door, our laundry on the floor, cups everywhere. It was bad and it's embarrassing I let it get so bad. It's even more upsetting that I let our baby live with us. That's where the issue comes in. From sister-in-law's perspective, I was disrespectful to her by not saying hi to her when we saw each other. I was disrespectful to her family for saying it was too much to be out in the living room with her kids. I disrespected her house by making her room disgusting. And that last part is the only part I agree with. I am utterly ashamed it was that bad, but it really wasn't dirty for long and we cleaned it all the night she kicked us out. She brought all the points up in a screaming match with my husband when she kicked us out, too. No talk about this beforehand. This may be where I'm the asshole because my mentality might be off. I don't feel the need to apologize because 1. Her kids were always sick and touching my newborn. 2. Every time I was out of our room with my newborn, the sister-in-law or her husband would comment about my baby saying she's slow or has seizures. She has no issues at all, but I was a new mom, suffering from PPP/PPD, so it scared the hell out of me. 3. We ate out a lot, within our budget, to have a sense of autonomy. 4. She took pics and videos of our room while we were working and sent them to everyone. And she let us know that when she kicked us out too. I guess it's just a feeling of she did way worse to us than we did to her? I'm not sure. She uprooted our entire life when we were almost back on our feet and gearing up to move out. We paid rent and utilities, but the yelling wasn't worth fighting for. Growing up in an abusive household changes the way you move, and fight or flight kicks in fast. So, I blew up on her when she kicked us out because she was hitting me with the door, yelling and talking shit about our baby. I need someone to set me straight on this. I need advice because as of now, I have no will to ever see her again and we're being pressured to make things right.
One night, my whole family decided to go to my grandma's house to hang out and have a good time. Everyone ended up leaving, including my grandma and her husband. so me and my siblings ended up leaving with my mom to go get some snacks. We ended up driving around wasting time, till we eventually decided to head back. Once we arrived at the house, me and my brother went to go open the door. I then had a bad feeling but didn't think anything of it. We entered, heading to go upstairs, when I had noticed something standing ahead of us. It was a figure of a man. My brother and I then ran out and told our mom what happened, so we all left. We were all shaken up, and we left and waited till my grandma got home with us. We all went on with our night, and everyone went to sleep, besides me and my brother. Later that night, me and him heard footsteps approaching the door that then stopped. Keep in mind, no one else was up, so we locked the door and stayed away from it. We didn't end up sleeping that night.
My crazy cousin blamed me for him destroying his marriage. Now my family hates me. My wife has a platonic life partner who has lived with us for 20 years. The kids call her Ma, but her name's Sally. We live in a 4-bedroom house, and Sally and the kids each have their own bedrooms. Sally is aromantic and asexual. She and my wife love each other very much, but platonically. Sally is like a sister to me. My cousin Dave has been married to his wife Mary for 15 years, and they have 2 kids together. Dave talked Mary into opening the relationship about a year ago, and now they're getting divorced because he's struggling to find anyone willing to date him. Mary isn't, and he's incredibly pissy about it, and it's destroying their relationship. And by it's I kinda mean he's jealous and resentful, so he's making that her problem. And also, now, mine, because he says it's my fault. According to him, he thought it would totally work great because my family make polygamy and open relationships look easy. What? Setting aside that Sally's relationships with both my wife and me are platonic, there's no open relationship in our household. Sally and I each get a weekly date night with my wife. I take the kids on her night, she takes them on mine. I think my wife and I have significantly more quality time together than we would if it was just the 2 of us. When the kids can't sleep, they go to Sally, so my wife and I are never disturbed after we go to bed. Sometimes Sally and I go to games together, and my wife takes the kids because she's not into sports ball. No one in our house is dating anyone from outside it. These are committed relationships that are, to all intents and purposes, exclusive. None of us has ever mentioned seeing anyone else. Even if we were, I don't see how that would make me responsible for him treating Mary terribly because he's jealous. Somehow he was apparently convinced that he and his beer gut would get all the girls, but no men would be interested in a charming, kind woman who keeps herself in reasonable shape and bakes the best cupcakes you will ever taste. I'd have dismissed this out of hand, but my aunt, his mother, and like 6 other family members agree that I'm the a-hole and have been insisting I should apologize to my idiot cousin and help him talk Mary into closing the relationship and staying with him. Someone in my family is insane here. Is it me or them? Who's the a-hole?
My golden child's sister wants to walk down the aisle with me in white, and my father is encouraging her. So I yelled at him for all his shortcomings as a father and blocked them both. Growing up, my sister and I never seemed to get along. It was always a competition with her, and she found a way to have it her way all the time. Once a boy she liked asked me out, and because I knew she liked him I turned him down and even offered to introduce him to my sister. I understood that she would be a little upset, but instead, she goes around our school and family friends talking about how I threw myself on the guy she likes and what a whore I was. When I graduated high school, I got into a pretty good college on a half scholarship. I posted about it on my Instagram and even got treated to a fancy dinner by my cousins. All this while she was still living with us and attended a community college after my parents' persistence. When she found out about the posts and dinner, she went crying to my dad, who has always favored her, and took her side and threatened to not pay for my college for flexing and being ungrateful. There would also be times when he'd buy her whatever she wanted for her birthday, like a new phone or diamond jewelry, but if my mom or relatives bought me anything for my birthday, he'd make a face and mumble to himself about how much money I waste. For my 16th birthday, my mom bought me a diamond necklace with my name on it. My sister acted like she dropped it when I was away and damaged it by messing up the lock. We tried returning it and getting it fixed after, but they quoted my mom a very high amount to get it repaired. My dad somehow forced my mom to just exchange the necklace for money for family reasons, which was just to throw my sister a bigger 17th birthday party, while he didn't even throw any party for my 16th birthday. His reason? You need to focus on your exams. Many years later I moved out, took out a student loan, and got a job. My 28F fiancé is getting married in May, and I love him a lot. I recently arranged a girls' trip to Vegas for my bachelorette party with all my girls. When I told my parents about this plan, my dad insisted. I let my sister come with me too because marriage in the family is a family event. My sister already booked tickets without even asking me if she could join us, which I found extremely annoying because I felt like I had my hand forced into allowing her to come. After talking to my fiancé about it, I decided I would let her come on our trip also because she's been spamming my phone practically begging me. On that trip, we were also going to pick up my wedding dress and dresses for the bridesmaids. During the shopping, she was acting very rudely and constantly commenting on the body shapes of other bridesmaids and making comments about how certain types of dresses would not look nice on them. She also picked the most cleavage showing dresses that I was not very comfortable with at my wedding. A few days after shopping, I found out from the store manager that we had 2 white dresses to be tailored. I was confused and asked her what she meant, and she told me that one dress was the one I picked and the other was a short lace mini white dress. I called up my maid of honor and she told me that she saw my sister check out white dresses at the store. I called her up and asked if it was hers, and my dad joined the call and said it was only fair if she also walked down the aisle in white because she was getting older and was still single and may not have the experience of doing it in her 20s. As a good sister, it is only fair for me to want to do it with her as it shows our close sisterly bond. I told my bridesmaids and fiancé about this and they were all shocked at my father's behavior. My mom has been pretty quiet about this whole situation but was also upset with my dad. I informed some of my cousins and they all tried to talk to my dad about how that was a bad idea, and he said that he wouldn't let us do it at our decided venue if we didn't let her. I never had big parties or celebrations. It was always my spoiled sister who had the big parties and gifts. I picked my family vacation house because it was my late grandmother's house, which my dad now owns. My family and friends are offering to help us cover the costs of finding a bigger, nicer venue, but my mom is asking me to work it out with my father and sister, who are refusing to talk to me because I'm being an egoistic bride. When I heard that, I got really mad and yelled at him for all his shortcomings as a father in my life and blocked both of them. His side of the family has been calling me nonstop to calm down and talk to them as well.
Thank you to the girls who intervened when they thought I was date violating my girlfriend. A few months ago I was out drinking at a bar with my girlfriend. She's diabetic and noticed her sugar was dropping. A loud bar isn't the best place to be when you are having a medical issue, so she said she'd find a bench outside and come back in when she felt better. Wanting me to keep having fun, she assured me she had it under control and I let it go. 10 minutes go by, I start to worry and go to look for her. I found her sitting on a set of stairs with her head in between her knees. She ran out of soda with her blood still being low. Not a huge deal, you get used to this sort of thing happening every now and again. I run back into the bar, grab another soda, and trot over to encourage her to take sips. Looking at the situation, it completely warranted some type of checking in on. A girl alone looking drunk as F while some dude is encouraging her to take sips of liquid. A group of girls approached us to ask what was going on. Oh man, even now I can feel myself getting nervous. The situation was explained. I anxiously showed them her insulin pump and spat out a few sentences about her sugar being low. Satisfied, they walked away. I just want to say thank you to those girls. It's great how women have each other's backs. Thank you guys. Even though you gave me the most anxiety I've had in a while.
I regret donating a kidney to my mom. 3 years ago, my 36F mom, 69F, was diagnosed with kidney failure. Most likely due to high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes, which was poorly controlled for years because she doesn't like doctors and didn't want to take pills. She was told she had to go on dialysis 3 days a week, up to 6 hours a day including travel time, while she was put on the kidney transplant waiting list, which takes years to find a match on average. She was firm that she did not want to be on dialysis, and told me to give her one of my kidneys. She said she had raised me and provided for me all these years, put me through college, etc. Now she needed this from me. Filial piety is very important to our culture. We are Chinese American. I was taken aback by this, but after thinking about it, I also thought it was the right thing to do based on my own values. I love my mom, I care about helping people. I was already signed up to be a deceased organ donor. Plenty of people live with only one kidney, so if I can give a kidney to save someone else's life then I should, especially if it is a loved one, etc. They make being a kidney donor sound very good in theory. People with only one kidney can live just as long as people with two. And if you ever need a kidney you get priority on the transplant list. What they leave out is you have to basically turn your life upside down after, because you now only have half the reserve. I had been completely healthy before, but only a year after the surgery they found that my remaining kidney couldn't handle doing the work of two and was now also in the early stages of failing. I had built my life around food. I was working my dream job as a chef and ran a food travel blog as my main hobby. However, to protect my remaining kidney I basically had to cut out meat, fat and sugar from my diet, and limit salt to just 1 gram a day, which meant I had to quit my dream job as a huge part of it was tasting the food I was serving. I don't have any other skills, so the only job I was able to get was as a secretary. Almost all of the food I can still eat is very bland, and when I do travel I often have to bring my own food or survive on salads. Meanwhile, only about 2 years after to transplant, the kidney I gave to my mom also failed. She would often not be taking the immunosuppressants for after the transplant because she could not tolerate the side effects. It's possible her hypertension or diabetes were still not optimally controlled, and she also did not make any of the dietary changes. She is now back on dialysis and the waiting list. I'll probably get flack for this, but looking back I cannot help but think it was not worth it. I bought my mom maybe 2 extra years at the cost of 30 years of my life or more that would have been free from worries about chronic health problems. I also lost my career, my main hobby, and my husband and I had been thinking about starting a family, but my doctor told me it would not be advisable for me to have children. I was previously healthy, but I'm now on several medications to try to stretch my remaining kidney as far as possible before I have to go on dialysis. And even if I do get a kidney transplant, I will have to take strong immunosuppressants with significant side effects for the rest of my life. Unlike the benign blood pressure and sugar meds my mom could have just taken like she was supposed to not be in this position in the first place. My mom lived a full life, almost 70 years, and to try to buy her a few more years I feel like I cut mine in half.
Am I the a-hole for refusing to give my partner the code to my safe? I 32F am a gemologist. I spend my days in the lab testing and identifying stones. From the nature of my work, I also have a large and valuable collection of jewelry, but also gem specimens that I keep in a safe I specifically bought and had installed to keep them safe. I also have a second smaller safe for keeping important documents like passports. I own my home, and my boyfriend 33M, of 2 years, recently moved in as he was renting before. I gave him the code to the smaller safe so he could put valuables in it, but he also wants the code for my gem safe. Not to put anything in it, but he says because we are living together now I should trust him and give him the code. I've said no because he has no reason to open the safe, as the only thing it's used for is storing my collection. He said he has no interest in my gem collection, doesn't want to look at them, but still wants the code to access them. This is causing tension because he says I should give it to him as a show of trust, and I said no, because he literally has no reason to go in there, so he doesn't need the code. This is a 6-figure collection, so I'm not being difficult over a few little gems here. I am the only one who knows the code. So Reddit, am I being the a-hole here? What makes you infuriated? An 8-year-old girl in America went to a Bible summer camp in Philadelphia in the year 1975. Her name was Gretchen Harrington, and her family described her as someone so kind and outgoing that anyone who met her would be her friend within 2 minutes. She was the light of everyone's lives in that town. Her smile could only be described as angelic. One night at Bible camp, Gretchen went missing. A concerned camp leader and minister immediately notified the police. Police, parents, the minister and volunteers all set out to find the girl in the woods, but were unable to locate her. Her parents were a nervous wreck every single day while they waited for news of what happened to their little girl. It was only 2 months later that the terrible uncertainty Gretchen's family had to go through came to an end when her body was found many miles away in another town. It had been maimed in a way that was unexpected for a girl of her character and age. Their minister found the body himself and delivered the message to her parents personally. The same minister who alarmed the police and led search efforts, David Zanstra, led the memorial service. And after the service, he remained close with the family of Gretchen, consoling them in their time of need. He was their go-to for information about their daughter now that they had lost her permanently. And then, in July 2023, an 83-year-old David Zanstra confessed to the police that he, himself, was the unaliver. He had taken the girl from the campsite, tried to violate her and hit her to death with his bare hands when she refused. Imagine taking a family's daughter from them and pretending to be their best friend for decades. People who have visited the US, what is your WTF America story? I'm English and visited California about a decade ago. We'd been staying in a small town called Mariposa while we visited Yosemite National Park for a couple of days. My friends had continued their road trip on to Vegas, while I had to head back down to LA and get the plane home. I was waiting for a bus to the station in Mariposa. It was raining, uncharacteristic for April I was told. A pickup truck pulls up. The first thing I see is a huge dog sitting in the passenger side. Then an old lady, I'm guessing around 60, peers over and asks me, "Where are you headin'?" I told her I was going to LA, and she says me too, get in, and starts pushing the dog into the back. Partly out of politeness but mostly out of curiosity I jumped in. I think it was around a 3 to 4 hour drive to LA. As we set off she starts listing all the things we have to do before we get there. Visit her friend to move a trailer, visit another friend who has broken her ankles to feed her dogs, visit a place where she could do her taxes, that should only take a few hours. It was going to at least double the journey time. Now in my head I was saying fuck no, I don't want to do any of that, but I found myself saying okay. She was super happy. After about half an hour we arrived at her friend's house. She had 2 huge dogs and I found myself carrying an industrial-sized bag of dog pellets to fill a huge automatic feeder. While my new old lady friend went to use the bathroom, the slightly larger woman that owned the house showed me photos of her daughter and asked me what I thought of her. I said she was pretty, which wasn't a complete lie. She told me she didn't have a boyfriend and I nodded and smiled awkwardly. Then she said, "So you're going all the way down to LA with old lady friend, are you?" I saw my chance. Actually, I think it might be better if I get the train. Do you know when the next one is? Slightly large woman checked the train times. Then she hollered out, "Old lady friend, he needs to get the train. The next one's in 20 minutes. Old lady friend rushes, as fast as a 60-year-old can, back into the room, shows no signs of being perturbed, says we better get going, then we quickly get in the truck. It looks as though we may miss the train. Old lady friend is literally speeding down the road. She turns to me all of a sudden and says, "Has anyone ever told you about Jesus?" I tell her yes, that my parents have told me all about him. That doesn't put her off giving me a little speech and I don't say anything to stop her. I just smile and thank her. As we get closer to where the station is supposed to be, she winds down her window at some lights and shouts to a surprised dude on the street, "Where's the station?" Before accelerating hard and speeding round the bend in the direction the guy pointed to. We get to the station and there's time to spare. There's a bit of a queue at the ticket booth and I say thanks, and take my place in line. After a few minutes I reach the front and buy my ticket. I turn towards the platform and feel a tap on my shoulder. Old lady friend is standing there, apple in hand. A big smile on her face. She presses the apple into my hands and places her hands around mine. She bends her head in prayer. What she said I can't remember, I was too busy looking at all the people staring at me, an old lady whose head barely reached my chest holding my hands. Amen. Without another word, she walks away. The train arrives and I leave. When did you first realize you were pro-choice or pro-life? I think I was around 5 years old when I come home from school and found my mom and aunt caring for my teenage cousin as she rested on the sofa, just as they would me when I was sick. I asked if Karina, who was absolutely fine with this story being shared, was sick, and my mom explained that my cousin was okay, but that she had gotten pregnant and that the doctor had ended the pregnancy so she wouldn't have to have a baby when she didn't want one. That sounded absolutely reasonable to me, especially as I had already witnessed another woman in our commune give birth a few months earlier. Karina was only 16 years old and still in school, and I knew that she wouldn't want a baby or go through what that older woman had. My parents were always sensible people who understood that knowledge is empowering to a young girl, so I don't even remember a time when I didn't know what intimacy was or the general idea of where babies come from. Once I learned that a woman could end up having a baby planted in her tummy by accident, just because she had done something that I was assured was a lot of fun for grown-ups, and that the seed could be removed if the woman didn't want it, I was completely pro-choice. That day after Karina's abortion I still didn't understand all the details. I knew she had done intimacy with her boyfriends because my friends and I would try to listen through the walls of our adjoining bedrooms, and I knew that she took pills to make sure no one planted a potential baby in her, because I had seen her take them and been told that they weren't candies. It seemed to me that removing the seed was the only reasonable choice when Karina didn't want it, and she was absolutely fine as she rested on the sofa. It wasn't until several weeks later, I remember because it was after Karina broke up with Casper and got together with Martin, who didn't tease me, that it occurred to me to ask the women, as they all sat outside in the garden with a large thermos of tea, why Casper didn't get a baby seed in his belly too. Once I learned that all that stuff, from getting rid of a pregnancy to childbirth, could only happen to women, even though men participated equally, I became almost fanatically pro-choice. We didn't call it that of course, because it was the only position on the topic that I could even conceive of, but it just didn't sound right that all the hard stuff would happen to women. The fact that abortion was a possibility seemed like the one bright spot in it all, even after the women reminded me that a wanted pregnancy could make a woman very, very happy. I am still pro-choice because it seems idiotic that women like Karina, and me, should be forced to remain pregnant and give birth just because some people think that a person's seed is more important than an actual woman. What is a generally attractive trait that you don't want in a partner? Being really good looking. I have a friend with this curse. I call it a curse because it has ruined his life. He is abnormally attractive. He could be the poster boy for any magazine or advertisement without makeup or other assistance. Women would flock to him. Being around him was always like being in the movies. Attractive women would come up between us, sitting at a normal restaurant, and tell him how good he smelled and ask him for his number. It was always a thing I was jealous of. He was married to a nice Japanese lady. So he would always politely turn women down. He was no cheater, though he could easily cheat often if he wanted to. His wife eventually became jealous, and convinced herself that he was cheating on her. He wasn't. All the time that he wasn't with her, he was with me, and he wouldn't do that. He wasn't that kind of person. Anyways, they divorced. He loved her, but she wanted to go her own way. He later married a beautiful girl. She was a divorce lawyer, which is probably a horrible choice in the first place. She too convinced herself that he was cheating on her. He wasn't. But she drove herself to insanity, following him around. They had a daughter. She eventually couldn't prove that he was cheating on her, which he wasn't, so she started doing dirty lawyer stuff. Every time she scratched herself or bumped into a wall, every bruise she ever got from opening a car door wrong or whatever, she would photograph it. She built this case against him. It's important to know that this guy was in the military. So one day, she pressed charges of assault against him and domestic violence. All of it was fake. And it was dismissed in the civilian court. But the military doesn't care what civilian courts say. He spent months in the brig, awaiting trial. At the end of the court case, they asked him if he had anything else to say to her, and he just begged her to go away. To leave him alone, and go away. Take what you want, go away, please stop trying to destroy me. She cackled like a witch in front of the judge and everyone. It was dismissed and he went back to serving and eventually retired a few years later. But she took everything from him, including his daughter. She somehow managed to get 100% custody and she doesn't allow visitation somehow. He's in his 40s now. Still good looking, but emotionally in shambles and will never recover is my guess. Cursed with beauty.
How did you figure out your significant other cheated on you? Her little sister came up and asked if I'd met her boyfriend yet. I was like, you know I'm her boyfriend, we've been dating for years. She said no, the new one. So yeah. Her parents had CCTV all over the house. Her dad played the video of her kissing and fondling another man in front of me and half her family. I don't think he liked me. Dodged a effing bullet though. One of my friends called me and said, yo, I'm at the bar right now and your girl is here with some dude. The dude turned out to be my co-worker. She received a WhatsApp message in the middle of the night and the light from the notification was bothering me. I just wanted to get rid of the notification when I saw it was a reply from a message she sent that said good night my love, and the dude replied with a I love you. I actually didn't find out until nearly a year after we had broken up. Met a girl at a party and we started talking about crazy exes. Our stories sounded a bit too similar and I jokingly asked, did we date the same guy? Turns out yes we did, and at the same time, we had already been together for 2 years before she got involved with him. That was a fun night.
Am I the a-hole for not helping my daughter do her hair since I don't know how? My wife and I recently went through a nasty divorce which included a pretty harsh custody battle over our 2 daughters. Just for context, one of my daughters has really wild curly hair. Ever since she was a toddler her hair has been thick and hard to manage. When my wife and I were still together, she would do my daughter's hair on a daily basis. My daughter likes having her hair in braids, and my wife would braid it into all different styles. As I mentioned, my wife and I did not split on good terms, and it's been hard to co-parent with someone I resent so much. My daughters are 6 and 9 years old, and I just hope they don't remember the fights that I would have with their mom before I moved out. Now I live on my own and I get my kids every other weekend. The adjustment has been hard for them and they keep saying they don't like where I live. My youngest keeps asking me when I'm coming home, and I am getting tired of explaining to her over and over again that I never am since I just don't love her mommy anymore. My ex-wife has always been the nagging type, but it's only gotten worse since we broke up. Significantly, she has been up my A about not doing my daughter's hair perfectly while she's in my care. I've only had the girls 4 times so far, but when they stay with me I don't wash my youngest daughter's hair since it's a pain to brush and I don't really know how to manage it. Sometimes I ask my oldest to make her sister's ponytail since I don't really know how to do that successfully either. I've tried putting my daughter's hair up but it always becomes a tangled mess and leaves her crying. She screams and whines and says that I'm pulling too much so I just stopped trying. Last weekend I had the girls, and apparently my ex ended up finding knots in my curly hair daughter's hair since I hadn't brushed it all weekend. Like I said, I don't know how to brush her hair without hurting her so I figured I'd just stop trying. After my ex was done chewing me out over the phone, I told her she was making a big deal out of nothing as usual and I didn't see why she couldn't just braid our kids' hair before dropping her off. I told her that would be easier for both of us and that she could afford to do better when it came to taking care of our daughter. I'll be honest, I am embarrassed that I can't really help my daughter with her hair, but I'm a guy and you can't blame me for not knowing how to take care of long hair, let alone such thick hair like hers. I cheated on my boyfriend with his friend because he's just average. I have been with my boyfriend for 2 years and can honestly say I love him more than I love myself. He spoils me and does so much for me. He's a great guy but he's not the most conventionally attractive guy. He's 5'8" and in decent shape but that's about it. Most people if you saw him would say he's average. Meanwhile I am conventionally really attractive. I'm used to being with men who are way more attractive than him and hence he doesn't satisfy my intimate needs. I let him know this about 9 months in and he reluctantly agreed to allow me to be with other guys. He doesn't like it but he manages. The only rule is I have to get permission and he has veto power to say no if he doesn't like a particular guy. He doesn't like it but we never really had a big issue until recently. So his friend CJ is the finest man I ever met. Long story short, CJ and I were talking and I asked my permission to have intimacy with CJ. My boyfriend said no and also CJ wouldn't do that to him. I let him know I was already talking to CJ and he lost it. He accused me of cheating and I didn't. I didn't tell him this but CJ wanted to have intimacy behind his back instead of seeking permission. I would never cheat on him. He said he doesn't like that I flirted with CJ and that he reluctantly allows me to be with almost anyone so why CJ? I told him CJ is just one of the finest men alive. Anyway, afterwards my boyfriend has been acting totally different. He hasn't planned any date nights and when I ask him about it he says he's not in the mood. He stopped texting me throughout the day and no good morning and night text unless I initiate it. I tried planning dates for us to go and he says no. I bought him a bunch of gifts and games and I noticed he's feeling a little better after that. He will text me good morning and send me Instagram videos and funny tweets. But he's still not like how he used to be. Should I take him on a weekend getaway? Normally he pays so I think if I plan a trip it will show my appreciation for him.
I found out that my girlfriend inherited a lot from her father, and she's keeping it all by herself. Now, I don't know how to make her realize that her selfishness is breaking us apart. My girlfriend's parents are divorced, and her father passed away at the end of last year. She was his only child, so she inherited most of his assets, which was a lot because her father was wealthy. The problem started after she took care of all the formalities regarding the inheritance. We moved in together, which made me happy because we'd been together for 4 years. At first, I thought that the apartment we moved in was the only one she inherited because we didn't speak much about her father's fortune, but it turned out that it was just one of the 5 apartments she inherited. I asked her why she would withhold this information from me and she told me that she hadn't thought this would be so important, and she decided to sell or rent the rest of the apartments. It made me feel uneasy. If we had been together for so long and had both decided to move in together, shouldn't we discuss and choose which apartment to move into? She apologized, though, so I left it at that. But it didn't end there. I later learned she also inherited a house she had sold without consulting me. She argued that she wanted to give the money to her mom so that she could live comfortably, but I don't believe that anyone would just sell a freaking house to give money to someone else. That's pure BS. Another confuses me is how she just doesn't want to share. Her father left a car and lots of electronics, like a MacBook, and she just claimed it without asking if I needed a new laptop or something. I'm not expecting her not to use her inheritance, but we've been together for 4 years. She knows that I was thinking about buying a new laptop. It would be nice if she at least asked. I also felt she would at least let me drive the new car, but she's just started bragging about how it's her first car. She's not even driving it because she prefers to take a bus or walk to most places. She also wants to split bills evenly, even though I know she has a lot more money now, and I'm pretty sure she wouldn't even need my share of payment. I asked her about it, and she got mad at me this time. She told me that we are not married or anything and I shouldn't just expect her to give her whole inheritance to me. So yeah, just usual over-emotional woman BS because that's not what I asked for at all. I told her that I felt left out because she was deciding what to do with the apartments herself, and then she claimed the car and the MacBook while I was here, 2. She just doesn't want to understand. She argued that this is exactly why she never told me about her father's wealth. As if I was some gold digger or something. How do we make her realize that her selfishness may break us apart? It's harder and harder for me to commit when I know there are people out there who would be way more caring in a relationship than her. I was thinking about suggesting a couple therapy because I love her and don't want to break up. But she has to realize that she's not alone and I should be involved in her decisions. Update: we started couple therapy a few months ago. Our relationship went through a rough patch. We were both at fault and decided to work on it instead of calling it quits. The first few meetings went well, but he became weirdly invested in our relationship. After those first few meetings, he suggested that we both need separate therapy, with different specialists, to work on ourselves and not just focus on our relationship. I refused, as I see no reason to go into treatment myself. We went just for couple counseling anyway, but as I said, he grew overly interested, especially in my girlfriend's well-being, as he put it, and brought up individual therapy each time we went. I wanted to change our therapist, but my girlfriend was really against the idea, to the point of being mad at me for even suggesting it, which I also found weird. She eventually started her therapy per his suggestion. It's been a month. She's going to see her therapist every week, while we go to our therapist for couples counseling at least once a month, and I just want to say she changed. Not in a good way. She started to be more nitpicky, argumentative, and accusatory. She would pick up a fight over something, then bring it up in our session, have our therapist agree with her, and then they both gang up on me. The most recent example is from a week ago when I finally had enough. We mutually agreed about our living situation. We split bills unevenly, which means she pays more since she has more money than me. It was never a problem for her before, but suddenly it was. And then our therapist says, it's unfair, burdensome. So I told my girlfriend that either we could change our therapist or I don't want to go, to which she replied that either we go to this therapist or we break up. I think breaking up over my request is a huge overreaction, but she refuses to have a normal discussion with me, saying things like, eye for an eye, an ultimatum for an ultimatum. I'm at a loss. Was my request so unreasonable? Is there even a way to salvage this? If she breaks up with me, I will become homeless since I'm not working currently and can't afford rent for now. As I said, it's way more complicated. I can move back to my parents' place, but they're not rich, so I would probably need to drop out of uni to work full-time until I save some money. My whole life will crumble, not just our relationship. What's your craziest dorm story? So I lived on the top floor of a 17-story dorm. I think there were around 50 people living on the floor. Half being guys and half being girls. So we have 25 of the nerdiest guys you can find and 25 really hot girls who weren't in CS. They just took too long to pick rooms and this was all that was left. So, anyway, it's been a couple weeks of us living together and it's one of the guys' birthdays. Skinny, nerdy, stereotypical computer science major. Me and a couple of the girls on the floor think it would be hilarious to get him a stripper. So we start calling up stripper places and apparently none of the girls want to come to a dorm. Finally we get a place and the guy on the phone says he will ask and comes back and tells us he found us a girl. He told us it would be around $250. We don't have $250. I barely have $5 to buy a cup at the party I was going to later that night. This is when we got the genius idea to just spread the word around all 17 floors of our down that we were ordering a stripper and just charge $5 at the elevator. So finally the time comes and people start showing up. We got a bunch of chairs and put them in our lounge. The stripper is about to show up and we have around 50 people all crammed in our tiny lounge. The birthday boy was on a chair in the middle of the room and everyone else was sitting in a circle around him. Finally, the stripper showed up and it was just as bad as we expected. She looked like she came straight from the trailer park to our dorm. She had a schoolgirl outfit that might have actually been hers when she was a schoolgirl 12 years ago, but at 30 with a few extra pounds on her was not all that flattering. She gets there and is shocked we had 50 people in a room waiting for her to dance. She was thinking it was going to be a small get-together. Anyway, we have never ordered a stripper before being nerds and all, so we didn't have any music set up. She ended up just going around the room giving everyone a dance. Then it got weird. She finally turns her attention to the birthday boy. He's been waiting in the chair in the middle of the room. She stands him up. Takes his belt off. He looks nervous. He should be. Then she stripped him completely nude in front of all 50 people. I'm pretty sure he almost died right there. Then she proceeded to spank him with his belt and not to mention all the weird stripper things. She wrapped his PP in money and took it off with her mouth. Meanwhile this kid is bright red. His PP is basically crawling inside of himself to get away from her and there are just 50 people sitting watching in awkward silence. Just watching this train wreck. No one could look away. Finally she finished up and everyone just beelined out of there. That kid holed up in his room for a bit but eventually came out of his shell again. Final update, I gave my son a necklace traditionally passed from mother to daughter. Several people suggested getting the pearls restrung. My son did take them to a jeweler prior to wearing them to the party because he assumed the silk would be in poor shape after so many years. After reading all these comments I called to offer to have them restrung, but he already had. I insisted on reimbursing him, since a gift should be given in good quality. But, this update is really about my cousin. We had lunch today and talked about everything. So, a little more backstory with that side of the family. My mother's brothers didn't approve of her decision to marry my father. They didn't go to the wedding, and my mother wasn't invited to my cousin's coming-of-age party. I was 5 at the time, so I don't remember it very well, but my mom was really upset and wrote a long letter to my cousin that she still has. She showed it to me. After that, my cousin stopped talking to her father for years. My mother's funeral was the first time they spoke after that, and he died a few years later. My cousin expressed guilt over not having any children and not passing on our heritage. She said that she's worried everything her father thought would happen to our family, that we have assimilated too much. Being passed over for the pearls, which she was never truly in line for, but I didn't want to be pedantic, felt like a punishment to her. Now they belong to someone outside of the tribe, and she's worried the history of them, the story of what our ancestors went through, will eventually be lost to time. We both expressed a lot of grief to each other, and I think we gave each other some much needed catharsis. But, without a doubt, her objections weren't based in greed or prejudice, just sadness and fear. She said she wouldn't bring up the pearls again, as it's a done thing now. I offered her some other pieces of my mother's I thought she might like, and she said she needed to think about it. We parted on good terms, even laughing about how it's good we hash this out now, before we all get wasted together in a couple of weeks. A lot of people thought my cousin was a bad person based on my previous post, and I feel terrible about that. She really isn't. She's just grieving. I think that's everything, but if I forgot to address something you can ask about it in the comments. Oh, and I did give the earrings to my daughter as well as my dad's watch to my second son, his class ring to my third, cufflinks, heirloom, to my fourth, and my mom's bracelet she got the day I was born to my youngest. So everyone got something.
Am I the asshole for yelling at my younger sister? For some context, I am the middle child of 3 daughters, my older sister 22F, me 15F, and my younger sister 11F. My little sister has been spoiled by my dad and older sister ever since she was born. If she just begs and cries, she'll get exactly what she wants. She doesn't do anything, is overweight, lazy, and a crybaby. About a week ago my birthday came around. I wasn't planning on doing anything that day, but my older sister, I'll call her Jenny, came into my room suggesting we go to the mall. I agreed because she said we could go into my favorite store and maybe get Chinese food. We were planning on going with just us two, but my little sister, I'll call her Isabel, saw us getting ready and wouldn't stop asking us where we were going and eventually started getting ready herself. I was obviously annoyed as I knew how this trip would go. We ordered an Uber and left. When we got to the mall we immediately went to one of my favorite stores. Isabel began running around the store looking for stuff to get. I took time looking at everything because I knew Jenny wouldn't get me a lot, but she would get my stuff. After I got a few shirts, which were on clearance, and some jewelry, I went over to my older sister who was waiting by the front. We bought what I wanted, which came out to about $18 with clearance and the discount because she works at a store that partners with this one. When Isabel came over she showed my sister what she wanted and we went to pay. Her stuff came to around $30 even with my sister's discount. Jenny was angry, but we just left and continued shopping. I am a bit of a gamer, so I suggested we go to GameStop and get a new disc because mine broke somehow. Isabel then whines and says she wants to go into a different store because, in her words, GameStop is for nerds. My older sister for some reason agrees with her, so we go into another store. Isabel starts grabbing things off shelves and begging my sister for them. It was a long process, so I'll skip this part, but I only got a shirt and a pair of shorts from that store and we spent over $50 there. We decided to look around more and I again suggested that we go into GameStop. Jenny agreed at first, but then my younger sister chimed in. Let's go to the Build-A-Bear shop, and grabbed my older sister by the arm. She apparently needed more clothes for hers. My older sister agreed again, only because she has a Build-A-Bear that her boyfriend got her. We spent way too much money in that store and finally left. We were going to go to GameStop finally, but when we got there was a sign saying the guy working there was on a 30-minute break. Great. So we just decided to go to the food court instead. I got Chinese food while my sisters got some kind of sub. After we finished eating I wanted to go back and see if the guy was off break now, but again Isabel complained that it was for nerds again and that we should get ice cream. I'm lactose intolerant, so I don't do well with dairy, but Isabel gets ice cream anyways and Jenny and I sit and wait for her to finish it. When she's done I suggest again that we go to GameStop and she starts complaining that she wants to go home, and that her feet hurt, and all that bull. At this point I snapped. I will admit I do have anger issues, but due to my parents forcing me to control them around my sister, I built up a longer fuse, but this sent me over the edge. I didn't start yelling, but you could tell I was angry. I told her, Isabel, this trip was never about you. It was never for you. So stop complaining. This trip was for my birthday and all you've done is take over. My older sister looked at me, shocked and confused. My little sister just rolled her eyes and slumped in her chair. We never did go to GameStop and just ended up leaving after that and taking the bus home.
Am I wrong for not wanting my wife to take my daughter out?
My wife, F late 30s, and I, M late 30s, had a rough night with both of our children, M1 and F3, waking up a number of times last night.
We both were helping the kids get back to sleep several times, but I am sure my wife took more of the load. In the morning, the kids woke up and I got out of bed first to try to let me wife sleep more. As I normally do on the weekends, I asked my daughter what she wanted for breakfast and she tells me pancakes, which she always says. When I start to make the pancakes, having just a bit of sugar in the bowl, my wife pops in the kitchen and says she wants to go for dim sum at the restaurant. I start to talk about the plan and put the sugar back in the package, to clean up. As I am talking she walks off and says she will just go by herself. I say that is fine and then start making the pancakes again. I am about halfway done making the batter and she comes back and says she is going to take my daughter with her because she wants someone to go with. So she asked my daughter if she wants dim sum, and of course my daughter wants to go to a restaurant. I explain that I am making the pancakes because my daughter asked for them, so my wife says she will take my daughter with her after she eats the pancakes. A couple minutes later, when I am cooking the first pancakes my wife tells me she is going to take my daughter right away and gets her ready. I told her I didn't think she was treating me or my son right for excluding us. She left anyway with my daughter, leaving me to finish the pancakes, feed my son, and clean up. It is hard for me to find fault in my actions. I recognized that my wife had a rough night and provided her the ability to sleep in despite being tired myself. I cooked breakfast based on my daughter's request. I was open to the idea of going for dim sum but wanted to discuss the plan. I didn't stop my wife when she said he wanted to go to dim sum herself. I clearly told her I wasn't okay with her taking my daughter and excluding us, especially after I had been making pancakes and she miscommunicate with me about going by herself. I am hurt that despite me telling her I wasn't okay with what she was doing she did it anyways. Edit. My wife feels her actions were justified because when she brought up going at dim sum, I told her I was tried and wanted to talk about the plan, as opposed to being immediately enthusiastic. Also she says, she tells me all the time that she misses dining out. That said, we ate out last night, she picked the place at my daughter's request, and we had a meal out last weekend at a wedding. On average we probably eat out or do takeout at least once every 2 weeks at a minimum.
My ex cheated on me then tried to take his life when I refused to get back together with him. Me and my ex were together for almost 2 years until I found out he cheated on me. He cheated on me by hiring multiple girls over a 4-month span. It was a really messy breakup with him crying, kneeling, begging, saying he only did that because he was frustrated and that he truly loved me. Other times, he blamed me for him cheating because I didn't give him enough attention. I ignored all of this and blocked his number and all his social media. He tried using his family's phones to reach me and so I blocked them too, although I am civil with them despite all of this. Because he couldn't reach me through social media, he eventually went to my house. Thankfully we had a locked gate and my dogs were also very alert to intruders. He couldn't get in and so he slumped in front of our street and cried while demanding to see me. I already told my parents beforehand that I broke up with him, so my mom frantically called me that my ex was here crying. I immediately went back home and confronted him. He said a lot, saying how he couldn't live without me and that he'd end himself if I wouldn't get back together with him. I laughed at him and said he could try. Then despite his pleas, I went inside my house leaving him outside. After that, it became quiet for 2 weeks, so I thought he finally left me alone. Then one day I got a call from an unknown number, and when I answered it, it was his mom crying and telling me that whatever my ex did, I should forgive him because her son is in the hospital right now after trying to end himself because I don't want him back anymore. I was really surprised and also worried, and so I told the mom I'll talk about this to my parents first. My dad said he was pitiful and that although the end decision would still be mine, he hopes that I can support him for a while even if it means lying to him. My mom on the other hand said he's crazy and to never see him again. My sister is impartial with all of this. I also asked my friends and they basically said don't ever meet with him because he's a manipulative ass. My relatives said I should forgive him and to let bygones be bygones because God wouldn't forgive me if I don't forgive. What is the best way to do things? My ex cheated on me, then tried to take his life when I refused to get back together with him. I decided to go no contact with him and his family. I sent a text to his mom saying this, but I wish for his fast recovery. It did not go well and it definitely got a lot worse before it got better. His mom sent me a lot of messages and most were curses. It included a lot of derogatory words, like calling me the N-word. I knew she was mentally troubled because of what happened to her son, so I ignored it and blocked her. When I woke up, I got lots of messages and it was because she posted about what I had done. She posted that I was the reason for her son's attempt to take her life and gave no context. She even posted pictures of him in the hospital and she tagged me. It was overall a very hateful post. She screenshotted my text message to her about going no contact. I was turned into a villain overnight. Most of my message requests were my ex's relatives cursing me, and some of them were random strangers who also rebuked me. Even worse, some of my own relatives berated me and they said I should have taken their advice and got back together with him. My mom, she posted a response to my ex's mom post and it was about how she conveniently left out the part where her son cheated on me, and she left it out just to gain internet sympathy and turn the world against me. My friends also backed it up and sent receipts and screenshots. The hate died down a bit and I also received some support, but the damage had been done. My ex's company saw the post and they want to let him off because the whole issue is not good for their image since it reached a lot of people. I knew this because my ex's mom privately messaged my mom to delete her post because of it. She also said she'll delete her own post too. My mom got mad saying she'll refuse to delete it because now they want to be civil? But I did tell her to just delete it so that the whole thing can be forgotten. So far the posts are still up. As for my dad, he and my mom are not on speaking terms because my mom says he's not taking it seriously and my dad says that this isn't much of a big issue. To be honest, the most absurd thing about all of this is how my ex is still asking for me. One of his friends contacted me telling me that he asked for another chance again.
Bride's mother attempted murder the groom at the wedding. Me and my friend worked for a catering company, and this is how we met our bartender and bouncer. This client we had that day was some rich old money. We started with the catering consultation. The wedding planner had changed 3 times already before they even came to visit us, and the appointment kept getting rescheduled. The day of the consultation came and they actually showed up, both the mothers with the bride and groom in tow. The wedding planner didn't show, but we kept the consultation going and would email all relevant paperwork later. The mothers of the bride and groom were the best of friends, and they were so excited they got to plan their kids' wedding together, and the future of family names was preserved. It was during this rant that my friend cut them off and spoke directly to the bride and groom. "Friend, I want to know what you two want. What cuisine do you like? What style of service would you like?" Bride's mother, BM, They want a full-service buffet with carving stations, hors d'oeuvres and cocktail hour, and the cake will be from this bakery. Friend, I'm sorry ma'am, I thought this consultation was for the bride and groom. If you want a consultation for your own wedding you will have to book one with my assistant. BM, excuse me, but I know more than these two kids do, I plan my wedding myself you know. Friend, how about this, you two ladies can sit with my assistant and give him all the details of what you are thinking, and I will give the bride and groom a private tasting. BM, fine, but I better see every piece of paper before it's signed. I take the ladies to another part of the office and listen to BM overtake everything, occasionally pointing out that a handsome young man such as myself shouldn't disappoint my mother when it's her time to plan my wedding. I just nod and smile and do my best to keep them busy while my friend gets the real story from the bride and groom. Back at the main consult, friend, so I can already tell there's some tension, so let me assure you that my company has nothing but the best intentions to make your wedding day as grand as you envision. You, the bride and groom, are our first priority, groom said to the bride. I told you they shouldn't have come, my mom caves to your mom's every whim, and we will get railroaded. Bride to groom, I know, but I couldn't say no, she says it's her God-given right to plan this and I don't know what else to do. Friend, let me assure you that my assistant is merely hearing their suggestions, this is the real consult. But before we go further, if we cater your wedding, who will be signing and paying for our services? Groom, us, I won't have a dime of their money be involved with our day. Friend smiles, perfect. They proceed with the rest of the consultation, going over menu options, service styles, table setups, timetables and coordinating with the bakery. The last thing they went over was allergies. The groom has a very severe allergy to peanuts, which has apparently been a problem with BM. She believes he should just keep eating them and you'll get over it eventually. Except the groom's allergy is basically, touch nut, full anaphylactic shock. We jot down a huge note that peanuts will not be anywhere near this wedding. Before the consult wraps up, my friend suggests putting passwords on the account, you never know who might try to change something, and the bride says no, but before they leave, the groom pulls my friend aside and says absolutely, but please don't give it to the bride. After their appointment ended, and the bride and groom left, and the mothers left, I went straight to the liquor room and my friend and I compared notes. As we suspected, the bride and groom wanted something almost entirely different than the mothers wanted, but since the bride and groom were paying and signing the contract, we shredded the mom's plans. The bride and groom opted for a plated dinner for 80, with an hour of hors d'oeuvres and cocktail. The cake would be delivered by the bakery and their staff would handle it. All was relatively quiet with this contract, until 3 weeks before the wedding when a 6'7", 260 pounds African-American man came into our office. He said he was here about his cousin's wedding and gave the proper password. My friend and I sat down with him and he introduced himself as the bride's cousin and he's worried about the wedding. Earlier that week, the groom was admitted to the hospital after going into anaphylactic shock. BM lied to the bride and groom and fed him a meal where everything was cooked with peanut oil. He witnessed the whole thing and when he confronted his aunt, BM, she said it's a mind over matter thing. He wanted us to be aware that bride mother and bride father were uninvited and banned from the wedding. It was the bride's orders. There was a lot of drama with the other vendors and general wedding planning, and this was the final straw. Cousin also wanted us to know that he is a cop, and he'll be providing security at the wedding. He brought 3 of his cop friends with him and left one in the kitchen to keep BM from sneaking in and poisoning any more food. The day of the wedding was mostly drama-free until the reception started when BM and boyfriend showed up with a gaggle of their friends and tried to force their way into the wedding. Cousin took no shit, my friend and I backed him up as best we could. And they were ejected from the reception. BM tried one final time as the reception ended and the wedding party filtered out. She sat in her car until the bride and groom were visible, then gunned her car at them. Cousin rushed them out of the way and BM smashed her car into the reception hall's front door. My friend and I witnessed the whole thing from the parking lot and rushed over to make sure the bride and groom were safe. We gave our statements to the police, and BM was arrested. The couple were shaken but not harmed. A few weeks after the wedding, cousin showed up to our office again. He thanked us for everything we did to help his cousin enjoy her day. He told us that the groom told him everything we did was distracting BM and setting up passwords. He was grateful for everything we did and gave us his card. Anytime we needed security he'd be sure to have our backs. Not long after this, he was shot in the line of duty and took a leave of absence from the police force for a bit to clear his head. Having previous experience as a bartender, we hired him on and he has been with us ever since. He still works as a cop but only at a desk in the precinct, and eventually he'd like to open his own bar. Bouncer has a heart of gold and the brawn of an ox, and we are glad to call him part of our team. BM went to jail and was cut out of the bride and groom's life. Boyfriend divorced her. The happy couple just had a little bundle of joy a year ago, and are asking us to cater the baptism. GM was very apologetic for just going along with BM and was able to salvage the relationship with the couple. Oh, and my friend and I were sued for damages, slander and breaking contract, by BM. The case was laughed out of court.
I made my kind boyfriend clean my poop from all over the bathroom. He was petrified. This was still hands down the single most embarrassing moment of my life. Back in 2019, I was training horses and was at a 12-week international competition for show jumping. For the first time in my career, I had a string of horses to show for clients, which in this field is a pretty big step. One morning, I was inspecting a horse's leg who had accidentally cut himself. While I was hunched over inspecting the wound, someone walked by and shook out a tarp which scared the ever-living crap out of the horse. In his panic, he bolted forward and kicked out, catching me in the side and sending me flying. I quickly got up and ran away to avoid being stomped on, but it was then I realized I couldn't stand up straight. I tried to walk it off, but the pain only got worse, and eventually, I couldn't sit or stand anymore, so I laid down in the dirt and discovered I couldn't get back up. I ended up taking an ambulance to the nearest hospital and learned the kick from the horse fractured 2 of my vertebrae, severely bruised my kidney, and tore many tendons and muscles in the area. I spent 8 days in the hospital as I was a fall risk and couldn't walk or really even move for that matter. The pain was so severe my team of doctors had me on numerous medications. One of those medications was the notorious painkiller Oxy. While the Oxy had helped the immobilizing pain, it also made me extremely constipated. I wasn't able to pass a bowel movement until my final day in the hospital after pounding prune juice, milk of magnesia, and loads of laxatives. Nonetheless, after 8 days I was finally able to pass the most horrific bowel movement of my life and they sent me home. I went back to the apartment my boyfriend of 1 year and I lived in, as we didn't have the funds for rehab. We also did not have the funds for an in-home nurse to help me, so my paramedic student boyfriend graciously stepped up and became my full-time caretaker. He kept track of my medications, assisted me when I needed to get up, and rotated my heating pad and ice packs. You name it, this sweet soul had it taken care of. Fast forward to day 7 of me being home, and I again had not passed another bowel movement. I was weaning off the pain meds at this point because I couldn't handle the constipation anymore. Around 9 p.m. that evening, I felt things shifting in my gut and told my boyfriend I needed to get to the bathroom. He carefully got me out of bed and up with my walker so we could make our way to the bathroom. Once I was situated on the toilet, he let me be. After about 30 minutes of struggling, I called him back and said it's not going to happen. My boyfriend lifted me onto my feet a little too quickly and I began to get dizzy. He saw me turning white and sat me back down on the toilet. Now that I was sitting again, I started regaining consciousness and felt the monstrous bowel movement involuntarily start exiting my colon with a scary amount of force. At that moment, I was so relieved. I looked at my boyfriend, who was still holding me up, and said, "It's happening. I'm finally SH-ting. Go go go," and I attempted to shoo him away. As those words left my mouth, I saw my boyfriend's face drop and I noticed the god-awful liquid poop that had been brewing in my gut for the past 7 days was in fact pooling around my bottom. That's when I realized, when I began passing out, my boyfriend had shut the toilet lid. Now, I was sitting here on a closed toilet with what seemed like gallons of liquid poop flying out of my SS all over myself, the toilet, the walls, and the floor, while my poor boyfriend stood there petrified. I instantly started crying. I kept trying to make my boyfriend leave while still SH-ing and sobbing. "You closed the lid?" "No." "Why did you close the lid?" "I'm so sorry, you don't want to see this. Go get out." When all was said and done, I was sitting there desperately clenching the handles on my granny walker, sobbing, covered by nothing but a t-shirt and my own 7-day-old diarrhea. The first thoughts running through my head were, he's going to leave me. This is the most disgusting thing ever, and he's never going to be able to look at me ever again. Between my sobs, my trooper of a boyfriend said, "It's okay.
People of Reddit who ran into the girl that rejected you in the past, how did it go? I had an ugly duckling phase in early high school, acne, my teeth were too big for my face, and my arms and legs resembled that of a baby giraffe. There was a girl, let's call her M, that I had a serious crush on. When homecoming came around, I worked up every bit of courage to ask her to go to the dance with me. I did it one-on-one to try and save myself some embarrassment if she said no. Instead of just saying no, she loudly exclaimed she would never be caught dead with someone like me and then proceeded to tell everyone how she rejected me. 10 years later, I go into a department store to pick up some new clothes and she's working the area I happen to be in. I didn't recognize her, but she recognized me. I don't consider myself attractive, but I'm definitely not the ugly duckling I once was. She said as much and started talking about how great of friends we used to be. I didn't say much. The conversation of grabbing lunch to catch up came up, and that's when I halted the conversation and reminded her how cruel she was to me and left her standing there.
My girlfriend's family wants to listen to me and my girl EFF on our wedding night. They said it's an intimacy ritual and they cheer at the end. I refuse to take part, but I still want to marry her. What do I do? So I'm getting married to my girlfriend early next year if all goes to plan. I don't have a lot of family. I've had no contact with my dad for several years now. She, however, has a huge extended family. For the most part, we get on great. They tend to be very loud and have huge personalities, which is sometimes hard for me to deal with since I've always been on the quiet side. but overall very warm and caring people. Something weird I've noticed since we got engaged is that my girlfriend's cousins sometimes make jokes about our wedding night. It's weird for them to joke about it since I'm pretty sure her family is aware we've slept together before since we share a bed at holiday gatherings and vacations. A few nights ago, we were discussing wedding plans and thinking about places to go on our honeymoon. My girlfriend and I were brainstorming ideas when she told me that we wouldn't need a bridal suite right away. Obviously, I ask why. We're getting married at a pretty nice hotel, and she says that she'd like for us to stay at her parents' house. I don't really mind this, we're trying to save money for a house deposit anyway, but girlfriend seems like she has more to say, so I push for why she wants it. She tells me that there's a really old tradition in her family on the wedding night. The husband and wife go into the master bedroom together and they are supposed to consummate the marriage. The rest of the family are waiting outside the door so they can applaud them and cheer when they come out. Then, a piece of the bed sheet is cut off and sewn into a big tapestry my girlfriend's mother owns. I think my girlfriend saw I wasn't happy because she quickly told me that we wouldn't have to actually consummate the marriage if I felt uncomfortable and we could. Just pretend. I don't want anything to do with this. I absolutely freaked and told her under no circumstances will I be doing that kind of thing in front of her whole family. When I came back from taking a walk to clear my head, she was now noticeably acting down and still is. I think she's also been texting her family about this because I received a text from her mother telling me that I don't understand the importance of family and tradition yet, and this kind of tradition has been around longer than I've been alive. I don't know how I'm meant to go on from here. I really love my girlfriend and she is the woman I want to spend my life with. I'm freaked out of course, but she is my whole world. But how should I handle her family and navigate his tradition? $50. Sorry dude. $55 and I'll throw in a nice sweater. Not unless that sweater is made out of $45. $100 is retail price. I'm sure you need spring break money. Take $60. $150 is retail price. Can you put someone on that knows about Xbox? I'll call a buddy of mine. He's an expert on Xbox. Great. He says the controller is $150 brand new. So I'm gonna have to stay strong at that $100. I think you waited for a moment without speaking to anyone, then messaged me back. Did I mention it's for my son? He's sick. I'd like to make him happy. Sorry to hear he's sick. And so? Tell him he won't get his controller over $40. Have you ever watched a family member pass away? In March, my dad collapsed in the driveway. Mom found him 2 minutes later. I found her 1 minute later. She said I called 911. Then I saw Dad on the ground, not moving. She relayed the instructions from the 911 operator. I did CPR on my dad, my first time ever doing CPR. I'm proud of my effort. I knew what to do, and tried hard. I heard the sirens and was super relieved. The cavalry was coming. The EMTs got here maybe after me doing CPR for maybe 2 minutes. They had all the gear, even this fancy chest compression robot thingy. 3 vehicles came, everyone was so professional and fast. We lived 2 minutes from a metro hospital. From the time of collapse to being delivered into the hospital ER was probably like 10 minutes. Every step worked perfectly, every helper and person were excellent. Dad got to the hospital and they treated us like one of their own. They did this interesting thing where they chill the whole body temp way down to protect the brain, then cycle body temp back up slowly over days, very high tech. Dad never woke up. For his wishes, we removed the life support as soon as it was clear he could not recover. He collapsed on a Friday, he died the following Monday. My mom was there holding his hand. I was there rubbing her shoulder. We chose the moment. After we removed support, his heart stopped about 90 seconds later. Incredibly quick, painless, and dignified exit. Mom's brother walked us out of the hospital. Obviously we miss him, but it's a clean grief. We got an incredible gift. We did everything right, and we still couldn't save him. The gift is that we do not have to wonder. We got the closure that other people are denied. We didn't come home and find him cold, forever haunted about what if. We know he didn't suffer because he was walking around 1 minute and out cold the next. We got to be right next to him as he took his final breath. We had a chance to pause, catch our breath over those last days and call family so they could come visit and make plans. My son saw me do CPR, and got to say bye to Grandpa at the hospital bedside. All of that closure happened because first responders are willing to step up and take a really hard job. The uncertainty you accept with bravery is a gift of closure on this side. Thank you. It's precious to me.
People who've worked for the super wealthy. What stuff have you seen? I work accounting for a real estate billionaire internet celebrity. It was mid-December right before the tax season ends and he decided that he wanted a private jet before the end of the year. He called up the company and they said they couldn't deliver him a jet for the next 2 years. So he had my team wire $50 million to the private jet company before even making any deals to prepay for a Gulfstream G550. He then called them back up and they got him the plane delivered in the next 14 days and he was able to write off the purchase before tax season ended. 2. I knew a guy who was a renowned helicopter pilot and had some billionaire clients. He told me that he once had to fly a lamb in from New Zealand to a super yacht party off the coast of Australia for them to freshly slaughter it and serve it on board. 3. I was a maid for a billionaire. The way they teach their kids is completely different. I'm constantly astounded by how this guy refuses to let his son do any guided learning. He even calls his son's school useless. Instead, his 16 years old boy lives off self-learning apps like Coursera, Duolingo, and Khan Academy. Lately, he got into investing, but this kid didn't bother asking for a mentor. He just downloaded the app his dad recommended, set up a custodial account, and grinded the lessons he found interesting, skipping anything that sounded basic, and within 2 months he had profited $270 by flipping stocks the app gave him and reinvesting. I ended up asking him how he did it so quickly and he credited the lessons, saying they gave him a roadmap on how and when to buy which stocks. Mind you, this kid had no prior experience. Edit, since everyone was asking, the app is Bloom, learn to invest. 4. A friend did some work on Sylvester Stallone's home. Apparently there's a ton of statues and art of himself, some of which are naked and very well endowed. 5. My bro worked on a super yacht, quit the day he saw one of the passengers' 14-year-old son take a massive shit on the deck and tell him to clean it up. 6. I've worked for billionaires. One defining trait is that they are so tired of people trying to fuck them over that if there is any hint that you've taken advantage of them, you are gone. A lot of people think that they won't notice if you've overbilled them because the money means nothing to them. It's not true. 7. Their kids are all kinds of screwed up. Turns out money can't replace an emotionally available parent.
I divorced my husband because he said I was a fat cow for the whole world to see. I served my husband divorce papers because he posted a reel making fun of my weight. My 32 husband Z, 30, and I have been married for 3 years now, together for 5. Our marriage isn't perfect, but we make it work. We both were fairly in shape when we first got together, but I gained a lot of weight when we had our kid and haven't since then. We are all Indians and it's somewhat acceptable to pull each other's legs. Most families do it and there isn't any malicious intent. So my husband routinely teases me about my weight gain, but I know he loves me and I try not to take it personally. Because even I tease him about how long he takes in the shower and how obsessed he is with styling himself in front of a mirror, as a guy. My husband is quite the following on Instagram, usually posts a lot of reels and it's usually harmless and fun stuff. I was scrolling through Instagram and saw a reel about me, how much he loves me and all. I thought that was sweet. Immediately after, I saw another one, this one was also about me. It was 5 years ago versus now pictures of both of us. With the background voiceover, not his voice, pulled from a dialogue from a popular movie, translated. Before the wedding, my responsibility was for 55 kilos, now it is 75 kilos and it keeps on increasing. Followed by a cackling sound. I don't know what happened, but a switch in me flipped. I felt humiliated and ashamed of myself in a way I had never felt before. I felt anger and hurt at my husband for something that was normal ribbing for both of us. My husband was away on a work trip so I didn't contact him. I left divorce papers on his nightstand and went to my friend's house, 2 days ago. The entire family, including him and my parents, have been hurling insults at me for bringing shame to their family. They told me there's no concept of divorce in our culture and I should just keep my mouth shut of these feminists bull and come home to tend to my family because as a wife and a mother, that's what I am supposed to do. That nobody will marry me because I'm trying to be a divorcee, this is true in my culture. My husband said that he didn't think I'd snap at him like that and thought this warranted a conversation that would hurt so bad. I think I may have gone too far. I may be at the risk of getting disowned by my family. Should I just accept this compromise? Was I too drastic? What was a loophole that you found and exploited? Going anonymous? Because you never know. Many years ago in Canada, I lived in an apartment shared with a couple of other students. Canada is cold. As students, we each had a room and a central kitchen. Heating was included in the rent. Great. We just set the kitchen heat control thermostat to 72 degrees. This was great in September, even October into November and onwards. We enjoyed the comfortable ambient temperature you would expect for a heated apartment. Sometime in late November or early December, the landlord began to complain that his heating costs were too high. He asked if we would mind setting the heat to 60 degrees while we were on campus in classes and overnight sleeping. And 70 degrees when we were there during the evening. Sure. No problem. Reasonable. We complied. In January, the landlord complained again about heating costs being too high. We thought we had been flexible enough. We were doing as reasonable measures and were paying the same rent as we had in September through November. Heat was supposed to be included in the rent. Landlord asked if we would do 50 degrees for days and 60 degrees for evenings and overnight. We declined. Not reasonable. We were paying for heat. There was a discussion, in some negotiation. Then that landlord made a strategic blunder. One day, he said he would be doing maintenance while we were in class. When we came home, we discovered that he had put a locked plastic box over the thermostat and had set it to 50 degrees colder than cool. It was frigid in both the rooms and the kitchen. Doing that while we were out for class had been a mean and dirty trick. Not to be outdone, we got a plain old bucket. Canada, as you might expect, has snow from sometime in December until mid-late April. Our standard practice became for the first person going into the house from class and the last person going out for the day to hang a bucket packed with snow on that locked thermostat box. The landlord just couldn't figure out why his costs went up and why we stopped complaining. That bucket of snow kept that heat-controlling thermostat thinking it was freezing in the apartment and kept the furnace running just fine. It took a while to get the right amount of snow to get a comfortable temperature. Soon we were warm and cozy. The landlord had to give us a day's notice for any inspections, and the bucket was always standing in the corner with a mop in it. By the time he arrived, he'd always find the apartment frigid 50 degrees during his inspections. We used that bucket for the rest of the lease until there was no snow to be found. It wasn't a paper loophole, but a technical one. Exploited it to the fullest.
Call my disabled child lazy? Lose your job and get sued. I am the mother of a 13-year-old boy who was diagnosed with narcolepsy in the past years. Before my son's diagnosis, I could have never known how awful some people can treat innocent people with disabilities, and I'm still a bit furious about the treatment my son experienced. Ever since he was little, he's been an extremely sleepy child. I had suspected it might be something medical when things only got more serious as he got older. He used to nod off exceptionally easily and generally had very low energy. He eats a healthy diet and never had any other issues, so I always suspected he might have some sort of condition that was restricting his energy. I have been wanting to take him to a specialist for years, but we live in a small rural town, and I couldn't afford for us to travel far to the nearest specialist. It took me forever to find one in our area that took our insurance. I wanted to cry with relief when I hung up the phone after finally making his appointment. After some tests that took place over a couple of weeks, my son was diagnosed with type 1 narcolepsy, which means he has sleep attacks where his body will enter REM sleep immediately, and he expresses sudden muscle weakness during these attacks. It was certainly hard to learn that this was something my child might deal with for the rest of his life, but I was grateful to have some answers and tips from his doctors on managing his condition. As I said, my baby has always been a sleepy child. I've gotten complaints from his teachers before about him nodding off in class, but they've always been understanding. I've never dealt with a truly nasty teacher of his until now. My son's school got a new teacher last month, M.S.Divine. She teaches one of my son's classes while also being his homeroom teacher, so he spends a lot of time around her. She had only been working at the school for a week when I got an email from her explaining how my son kept falling asleep in her classes and that if he didn't correct this behavior, he would be punished. I emailed her back, saying that he most likely has a medical issue regarding sleep, and that he was currently being tested by a sleep specialist so we could start understanding his specific condition. I was shocked when she replied with a nasty email saying that she was sure my son was just being lazy and that it wasn't good parenting for me to make excuses for him. She insisted that I just needed to put my child to bed earlier and that sleep was a simple problem to fix. I was disgusted with how disrespectful and ableist this woman was acting, and I requested a meeting with the principal right after receiving her last email. I was already grossed out by her behavior, but after speaking with my son and getting the full story, I knew this woman needed to pay. Call my disabled child lazy? Lose your job and get sued. In my first post, I explained how my son had been being harassed by his ableist teacher while he was in the process of being diagnosed with narcolepsy. After I had received some inconsiderate and straight-up rude emails from his teacher, M.S.Divine, I scheduled a meeting with the principal. Before the date of the meeting, I asked my son if M.S.Divine was ever mean to him in class, and he told me the entire awful truth about what had been going on. Apparently, there had been multiple times when my son had accidentally dozed off, and M.S.Divine had woken him up by pulling him up by his neck. My son started crying as he accepted this after he saw how upset I was at this new info. He just said that she kept calling him lazy, and he had started to believe it and just didn't want to make a big deal since she was an adult. By the time the meeting came, my son had been officially diagnosed, and I had official medical paperwork proving his condition. I was already in the process of getting his school schedule adjusted to better suit his needs before the meeting. I went into the meeting with the principal and the counselor with printouts of M.S.Divine's emails as well as my son's medical documents. I read the interaction between me and my son's teacher out loud, and both the principal and counselor looked staggered. The principal immediately started apologizing to me about his staff's lack of accommodation towards my son and told me that he would speak to the teacher individually. I told him that wasn't good enough, then I mentioned how she had been putting her hands on my son. The principal and counselor exchanged a panicked look when I shared this detail, and I started talking before they could respond. I said that I wanted the teacher removed from the school due to her behavior, or I would go ahead and sue them since I had documented proof of her discriminating against my son for his medical condition. Both staff members started rambling, saying anything to get me to reconsider, but all they said was that they couldn't fire M.S.Divine since she was tenured. I told them that wasn't good enough and that I would be moving ahead with suing the school and M.S.Divine. I won't lie, the case took a long time to settle, but at the very least, the school removed my son from M.S.Divine's class after my meeting with the staff. It was such a difficult year. I was dealing with the stress of the court case and adjusting to my son's new diagnosis all at the same time, but in the end I'm proud of myself for following through. Because of the clear evidence of M.S.Divine's ableism in her emails and the type of language she used, combined with my son's testimony, we won the case. Not only was M.S.Divine completely removed from her position at the school, but we were awarded a pretty good settlement as well. At the end of the case, I sat my son down and reminded him that no one is ever allowed to single him out for his condition, and that I would always protect him against those types of people. I showed him how much money we won, and I told him I put it in an account that he could use when he was 18. I also told him I was sorry he had to go through this in the first place. It's been a hard year, but I'm happy I defended my son and that he got something out of this painful experience. My homophobic doctor nearly unalived me with her negligence. I went to a gynecologist a few months ago who essentially belittled me. She told me I needed to seek therapy for my physical pain, refused to complete the tests she ordered, and told me they wouldn't be helpful. When I asked why not, she point-blank said we don't need to test your progesterone on a hormone panel because it would provide no helpful information. She also heavily implied one exam hadn't been done because I don't regularly have proper intimacy because I'm gay, which was entirely irrelevant to why those tests were being performed. A few days ago I saw a new gynecologist, which I did not want to do, but my pain has gotten so bad that it started to affect my ability to make a living. Within the hour, I got blood tests and an ultrasound. I walked out of there diagnosed with critically low progesterone, a massive cyst and severe endometrial hyperplasia, with a good chance that I could develop cancer, enter menopause, and be completely infertile in a few years. Had the original gynecologist done her effing job, I likely wouldn't be in such a medical crisis state. Being gay, having kids would more than likely be a process and a choice, thus not something I've thought much about. But knowing that not only that but my effing life expectancy is at stake is making my head spin. I can't shake the look of horror on my new gynecologist's face when she was doing the ultrasound, and am so absolutely completely livid at my old gynecologist for telling me to go to therapy when in reality I could already have cancer or be perimenopausal. I don't know if those 5 months made a difference in how bad things are, but it's likely the endometrial hyperplasia got worse and the big cyst got larger, which, again, had the gynecologist done what she said she was going to do, things might be less dire and I could have spent 5 fewer months in debilitating pain. I have never felt this kind of ire towards a medical professional in my life. I knew what was wrong to an extent. I thought maybe one cyst and some progesterone issues, but not to the extent that it actually is, a precancerous disease that rarely occurs in premenopausal people on top of everything else. I asked for the tests that were ordered to be done and why they weren't completed, and was met with, "You don't know anything, go to therapy." I hope she loses her license and has a terrible rest of her day because she didn't see me as worth her time and energy. My perfectionist sister removed my daughter from being a flower girl because she wasn't good enough. I told her to rethink her decision or I won't be a part of her life anymore. My sister has always been one of those people who has to have everything perfect, to the point sometimes it was hard to be around her. I was kinda nervous when she asked my daughter to be a flower girl in February because I knew she was gonna be a massive bridezilla. But I agreed because I thought that this was a very important occasion for her and we appreciated that she wants my daughter to be a part of it. My daughter was over the moon and very excited. Over the last few months, we have had to practice multiple dances, pay for very expensive dresses, and put up with her tantrums. I told her from the start if she was in any way nasty to my child I wouldn't stand for it. She assured me she'd never be nasty towards her favorite person in the whole world. Well, her now husband's little cousin started coming to dance practice with her mom, and my sister started to ask her to do little things like show my daughter how to throw the petals. I honestly thought she'd make them both flower girls for a while, but when she started to make my daughter sit out and have the little girl do her poem, I knew what was going to happen. But I prayed I was wrong. I invited her out to coffee a few weeks before the wedding and asked her what was going on. She did not beat around the bush. She told me she was glad I brought it up because she was looking for the right time. Apparently my 4-year-old wasn't doing everything right, and she was afraid she was going to mess up her version by saying the wrong thing, or not doing the dance right on the day. I told her she's doing a pretty good job and everyone was always praising her. My sister giggled and said it's not their day now, is it, so it's not up to us what's good for her wedding. I was pissed and I asked her straight up if she thought her niece wasn't good enough to be at her wedding. She replied with not as something big as a flower girl but to attend. I asked her how I was going to break it to my daughter who was excited about being in the wedding and she just told me to figure it out. The audacity? I told her I'd give her a day to rethink her decision, if not we wouldn't be attending and speaking to her ever again before I left. 2 days passed. I couldn't put it off any longer, so I broke the news to my child. Even though I tried my hardest and sugarcoated it as much as possible, the news still broke her heart. She cried herself to sleep. My husband and I decided that we would not attend her wedding because what she did was straight up disrespectful and mean. She did not appreciate that her niece was doing her best to practice just so her wedding would be perfect. Well, after a week when I was a no-show for anything, my sister started to panic and got everyone to talk to me, even dropping off gifts for my daughter. These people of course asked what is the matter and what could have been the reason for me dropping out of the wedding. When I told them why, many of our family, including the bridesmaids, dropped out. To make our child happy in the week of the wedding, we decided to go to my in-laws out of town and let her see her cousins. She had a good time and we ended up going for a few weeks away with no phones. When we came back, my sister had sent me multiple letters and emails apologizing. She and her husband even showed up at my job knowing I wouldn't want a scene. She was apologizing non-stop, but I told her to leave and think about it. My sister said she might be pregnant and me being stubborn is stressing her out. I told even if she is, pregnancy doesn't wash away all the crappy things she's done, and I hope her husband's siblings never treat her child the way she treated mine because I don't plan to be a part of her life. She burst into tears, saying she was sorry and she loved my daughter. I told her to leave before I called security, and her husband tried to talk to me alone because I was making her so upset and everyone was cold towards them because of me. I told them no, everyone was cold because Cinderella and Prince Charming forgot that after treating everyone like poop no one wanted to be in their happy ever after. They left after that. To my surprise, my sister's photographer reached out to me and revealed that this goes deeper than my daughter not dancing right. Apparently, she overheard my sister's mother-in-law and aunt-in-law talking in the bathroom. They used slurs against my daughter and husband. Then they called me the black man's WH. The photographer said they were both drunk, but brother-in-law also made jokes around my sister earlier in the day, which she smiled at. She also thinks my family members heard it and it's the reason they dropped out. So yeah, my daughter wasn't a flower girl because unlike me, her aunt, or the other flower girl, she doesn't have blue eyes and blonde hair. If you're hearing this, Sarah and Frank, F you and your family. My child is too good to be around trash like you both.
Have you ever had a job where you did nothing for years and nobody found out? I don't know if this qualifies as nobody finding out that I did nothing on the job, but it was certainly the easiest work I ever got paid to do. I worked as a home health aide before becoming a nurse. I got assigned to be an overnight assistant to a little old lady who would round-the-clock care. Before my first shift, I went to her home to meet her and she was very pleasant. The current aide explained that this lady needed assistance to get up from a seated or lying position, but could walk independently. She also was not able to reach, lift, bend, etc., so cooking, cleaning, and fetching things were tasks I should be prepared for. Sounded like typical home care duties and the lady seemed sweet. My first shift was in October from 10 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. Every night I went into her home and she was already in bed. The house was immaculately clean. The lady slept through the night and never rang her little bell for the bathroom. I tapped on her bedroom door a few times early on just to check on her, but she always assured me she was fine, and she eventually sent word to my agency that she'd prefer I just peek in to check on her rather than knocking and waking her. She also assured me through the agency that her day aide would leave a note if there were any housekeeping tasks for me. That was in mid-November, about 5 weeks into the job. Fast forward to the following May. I had literally spent 6 months sitting in this lady's living room watching TV or reading. In that 6 months, there have been one time that I found a cup on the drain rack and put it away. Another time I folded a little blanket that was sort of messed up on the couch. On this May morning, she rang her bell for the first time. I was startled and rushed to her room. She asked for a warm, wet washcloth to wash her face, but didn't want her need anything else. I took the opportunity to make sure she was comfortable calling me, since I'm male, and had considered that she might not be calling for help for that reason. She assured me that wasn't an issue and that she seldom woke up through the night. I did not speak to her again until the week before Christmas when she asked me to come to work early one night. She had a little snack, cookies and a gift card for me. At that point I had been spending 40 hours a week in her home and was just now having my third conversation ever with her. I stayed on that job until I relocated for nursing school and never had any occasion to provide care or even substantive housekeeping task. I just sat there 5 nights a week and got paid for it for slightly 2 years. Money I've ever made in my life looking after a sweet little old lady while also providing me so-called experience for future jobs. Schizophrenics, what is the scariest hallucination that you have ever experienced? I'm awoken, the night sky illuminated by a half moon. Outside my window, possibly a reflection, a face looks back at me. Bearded, helmeted, face mutated. The face contorts and twists and turns and goes inside out, then back to normal. Looks like it's laughing now. Starts moving towards me, through the window, now inside my bedroom, not more than 5 feet from my face, laughing. I scream silently, too afraid to make a sound, to even blink. The face hovers, menacingly staring deep into my soul, and shredding it to pieces. In a rare moment of clarity, I start praying to every god I know, from Jesus to Odin to Krishna to Osiris and back, begging for mercy, please, anything but this. The face then loses its face, and becomes a skull, a mix of human and cow that is hard to describe with words. It had horns. It was horrifying. I thought I was going to die. This laughing skull was going to take my life. In a final act of malice, it crept towards me, staring deeper and deeper into my eyes, further shredding and searing my soul with its pure hatred. I closed my eyes for the first time in ages, and when I opened them, it was gone. Looking around, my alarm clock displayed 3 a.m. on the dot. The half moon a sideways frown, reminding me that I was in danger. That the skull, the face, it was sent here, to hurt and end me. I didn't sleep again for another 2 days, and even then, I had almost collapsed from exhaustion.
Found out my boyfriend of 1 year has been hiding a huge secret from me for the entire time we've been together. I, 25F, started dating a military guy, 33M, just after graduating college in May 2022. I'll call him Sam. We matched on Tinder and I thought he was incredibly handsome and charming. Anyways, I gave him my number after just a few days and we were on phone calls and FaceTime every day. He was in another state for a leadership training course and set to be back in my home state by the end of the month. We talked about our days, our hobbies, and even wound up watching every Star Wars movie on FaceTime. I had also never met someone who was raised Mormon and left the church, so I felt like we connected on a deep level. I was falling for him. Hard. We had a fight just a few days before he came home. I told him how I wanted to go to Disneyland with 2 of my best guy friends that I've known for several years to celebrate graduating with honors. Sam was asking if he would be invited along, to which I said no, because we are still strangers and I had never met him in person. He got very defensive and said he would never go on a trip like that without his significant other along. I corrected him and told him that we aren't together, but he still seemed very hurt and I felt really awkward. I actually blocked him for 3 or 4 days after that conversation because it seemed like a big red flag. After the 3 or 4 days, I unblocked him. All my friends and family were encouraging me to keep him blocked. I missed him and felt heartbroken. Sam was really excited to hear from me and told me that the friend he would be living with picked him up from the airport. I was planning on doing this for him as a romantic gesture. We texted sparsely for a few days and I spontaneously asked him to come to the town I live in to finally meet in person. He agreed and my heart was pounding from being so excited and nervous. I told him my boundaries and explained that I wanted to keep talking before jumping into a relationship. Sam agreed to that too. After a few weeks, we became exclusive and I was over the moon about it. We fell for each other very quickly. He was coming over every day and I spent every bit of my free time with him. I started to notice that he would never pick up phone calls in front of me and he would quickly put his phone away when I entered the room. I called him out on it and he said it was because he didn't want to be distracted while spending time with me. It always gave me weird vibes but I brushed it off. Looking back, I feel like such an idiot when I think about the glaring red flags I ignored. I noticed that he never invited me to his place. I began asking to come over after being together for about 3 or 4 months and he always had excuses. He told me that his friend had 2 boys and one was autistic and unpredictable around strangers so they didn't want anyone over. I tried to be understanding at first, but this went on for 3 more months. Then 6 more months. He played it off as his friend never being home when he was home and not texting him back, so it was basically impossible to confront them. I became very anxious about him being on his phone because my gut was telling me something was very wrong. I had just been pushing this feeling of doubt down for months and it was eating at me. I had gone through his phone a few times and there was never anything out of the ordinary. He didn't have any women in his text messages or Snapchat. His photo album was full of pictures of me. His call log only had a few guys from work and me. Something was not adding up and I was straight up paranoid even though we had many mutual friends and I met his coworkers before going to the military ball with him. Our anniversary came up, but Sam was in the field so I didn't get to celebrate with him. I had told my family bits and pieces of my concerns and they were furious. One night, my dad approached me, saying he hired a private investigator that he found online and they found evidence that he was most likely married. He asked me who Cheryl's same last name as Sam was and I said that was Sam's sister. As it turns out, the PI had found a maiden name for Cheryl as well. The whole world stopped and I felt numb all over my body. I was in disbelief but it all made so much more sense. I went online and searched her name in a free people search website and found some close family members. Sam's name appeared, and so did her mother's. I looked up Cheryl on Facebook and found nothing. I looked up her mother on Facebook and started scrolling through her photo uploads. I found photos of Sam and Cheryl at their wedding. I also found family photos of them with their 2 children. I realized that he was talking about his own kids when he talked about his friend's autistic son. I confronted him about it the very next day and he had nothing to say. He kept trying to lie and saying he was divorced but they lived together on base. I threw up from crying so hard. He begged me to stay and apologized for lying. The kicker about it all is that his excuse for not telling me about his children was that I always said I didn't want kids and I would have never dated him if I had known.
What was the most cruel rumor you've heard about another kid when you were in school? I was the kid everyone loved to hate. I heard so many different rumors about me. Some laughable, others downright disgusting. Firstly, I was semi-famous in school. Not by my name, but by the nickname thoughtfully chosen by my peers. Tissue Tits. For a 12-year-old I was very enhanced. Looking back I think the girls must have been jealous. Apparently, I stuffed my bra with tissues. This rumor spread like wildfire around the school. I was in year 7 at the time. I had people from all the year groups coming up to me, sneezing and asking for a tissue. I would be so frustrated, I'd lift up my top, shouting at the top of my voice they aren't tissues, much to the delight of the boys. This almost got me excluded and arrested by the police. Indecent exposure. My second nickname was Piss Pot. Because I went around someone's house and I smelt like wee. Again this spread like wildfire. My name wasn't Charlotte anymore, I wasn't known as Charlotte. I was stripped of my identity. During this time, I was also being abused by my grandfather. All of this left me feeling super confused. At 13 years of age I had a lot to deal with, so I lashed out at teachers, kicked off, stormed out. I had barely any friends, I hated school and quickly earned myself a reputation. I guess I was an easy target. My granddad had already messed my head up, I couldn't stand male teachers or authority. In my final year at this school, I got accused of causing another student to end their life because we had an argument the term before over a boy. Apparently in her note she blamed me. I don't know whether this is true. All I know is the last time I saw her, we smiled and had a conversation. This final rumor caused absolute mayhem. I was pulled from the school bus by my hair, punched, spat at and chased around the village. Life was unbearable. One day I'd had enough. I wanted to end the world, the way I came into it. Bold, alone and crying. So I came home from school, locked myself in the bathroom and shaved my hair using my dad's razor, pre-Britney by the way. I saved my hair, I planned on drinking bleach afterwards, but something snapped in me. I ended up running away from home that night, to a friend's house. Then back to school the next day with a scarf around my head. I might as well have walked in with a target on my back. More rumors, more hate, more abuse. Eventually, the school asked me to leave. I flew at a girl who called me a murderer. I'm not a fighter, but I flew across the classroom and hurt her pretty badly. I'm pretty sure I had gotten to the point when I snapped. The school then permanently excluded me. I moved home, moved school, but it followed me. I learnt from a young age how small the world can be. I ended up leaving education completely at 14, found drugs, found an abusive partner. All the stereotypical stuff a damaged child would do. It was pretty messed up. But I have since come out on the other side. Thanks to my bonny little boy, he saved me and I'm grateful. I'm back in education at 25, my experiences taught me empathy and compassion. I'm turning my negatives into positives and working towards becoming a psychologist, so I can help those who need it. I am thankful I was around just before social media got big. I'm not sure if I would have made it out alive.
What is the most effed up thing you have seen? While climbing Denali, highest peak in North America, I saw a guy and his brother try to ski the Messner face. Everyone was cheering as the one brother started the run. And then we all turned silent and horrified as we saw and realized he definitely wasn't skiing anymore but falling and sliding down the massive ice face. Seeing this guy's body literally go through the air for a while over bumps between crevasses, and then seeing his body just stop, and his brother at the top looking down, clearly knowing what just happened. Definitely a heart stopper and a humanity check right there. Watching the cancer take over my uncle's body, making him go from looking fine to completely unrecognizable in just 2 weeks. Side of his neck, where the cancer was first discovered a year before, was inflamed to the size of a watermelon. When it was decided to take him off of life support, my aunt and cousin wanted him to pass in their home and not the hospital. At this time I had no clue how aware of his surroundings he was and if he knew what was happening to him. He had already looked dead besides breathing and groaning. Family came to visit one last time and in a struggling voice he said, "You guys can watch TV if you want." First time I had heard him speak in weeks and it sent chills down my spine. Couldn't believe he was fully aware and able to speak at that time.
Ida for not wanting my fiancé to make a birthday cake for his sister because it's my birthday too. My 36 fiancé, 39, I'll call him Dave for this post, can make really good, detailed cakes. It's not a business but something he enjoys doing. We've been together for 3 years. Dave's sister died close to 10 years ago. Before we met, coincidentally, me and his sister have the same birthday. Every year, Dave makes an extravagant cake and sings happy birthday to his sister. I want to make it clear I don't have a problem with this if it was on any other day, the day before, the day after, whenever. But my family always made a big deal of birthdays and he knows I enjoy celebrating and having my day. I know some people think you can be too old for birthdays, and that's their opinion, but not mine. So my birthday's next week. I asked Dave if we could do his sister's celebration on a different day. He said no, he's going to make the cake and do the routine he does every year. I said I get that. But this is my birthday and I'm actually here right now, and how many more years he's going to continue doing this? He got mad at me and replied that I'm being disrespectful. At that point, I got a bit upset and told him he's not being fair to me. Me and Dave agree on and get along well usually, and this just feels like a bit of a stupid thing to get upset about, but now it's blown up. So, Ida?
My parents want me to give my PS5 to my crap-eating brothers. Am I the a-hole for selling my PS5 rather than sharing it with my stepbrothers? My 15. Mom and dad met and briefly dated while they were both studying at uni. My mom gave birth to me after they had broken up and had to sue my dad for child support. I was raised by my mom and had virtually nothing to do with my dad throughout my childhood. My mom was an international student and her family cut ties with her due to the circumstances of my birth. Tragically, 2 years ago, I lost my mom to cancer and thus I was placed under the care of my dad. My dad has remarried and has 2 sons, 5 and 7, with his wife. It wasn't a bad arrangement at first, but we were all essentially strangers. I was given a bedroom to myself and we shared some meals, but other than keeping to myself. After a while, they started to act up. They would constantly pull pranks on me and I swear to you, I think they ate crap before. I saw them rummaging through the toilet one day after I forgot to flush. Anyway, about 10 months ago, I was lucky enough to score a casual job at an aged care facility as IT support. It was stupid easy money as it involved installing and maintaining a dozen or so common PCs used by the residents plus running basic computing workshops. I ended up accruing a whole lot of disposable income in a short time. Stupidly, instead of just keeping quiet about it, I decked out my room with a new TV, headphones and a PS5. Obviously, this setup was of great interest to my 2 stepbrothers. Initially, my rule was that they could play the PS5 anytime I wasn't using it, but I would get first dibs if I wanted to play or use my TV. I was also super accommodating by buying an extra controller, which I didn't need, and several kid-friendly games that they wanted to play. I eventually had to change the rule to only play when I was there because the 5 years.0 destroyed one of my controllers through spilling juice on it. This is where the drama started. They whined to my parents, who then ordered me to place the PS5 in the living room. I refused, stating that I had purchased it with my own money. This led to their argument that I have too much money and should contribute rent, utilities and food money. I called their bluff and said sure, draw up a contract and I'll get a lawyer to review it to ensure it complies with the Family Law Act. My dad then told the boys that he was going to buy a separate PS5 for the boys for Christmas, but the dude is clueless about the global shortage. Finally last night, after realizing that he had zero chance of buying one for close to RRP, my dad threatened me to either voluntarily give my PS5 to the boys for Christmas or he would toss it in the bin while I was at school. I was so pissed that I went on Facebook Marketplace and sold the PS5. The boys found out today and were devastated. I feel really bad because they shouldn't be punished for this crap show. My parents are in their room talking about me and I'm sitting here in my room. Am I the a-hole? How could I have handled this better? How I went from school teacher to chairman of a big company out of spite. When I was a tiny kid, my father was my best friend. He worked multiple jobs to support my family, all while powering his way through law school. He even built a couple of small businesses from the ground up with a couple of his friends. All while doing this, he managed to be the best dad ever, spending as much time as he could with my mother, myself and my baby siblings. One day, we found out that he had stage 4 stomach cancer, the kind that you don't recover from. My mother and I stayed by his side all the way till it was all over. The last memory I have of my father was when he was completely immobile, practically a vegetable at this point with tubes going in and out of his body and me just praying that he'd still be able to remember who I was. All the guy could do was smile at me just to let me know he still recognized his son even if the doctors told us most of his memories would be gone. Eventually, he fell into a coma for some days before waking up to say goodbye to my mother who was by his side when he passed. She was a housewife so we really didn't have much to go on after his death. Enter, my grandfather. He was one of those self-centered boomer types who makes everything about himself. After my father passed, he'd use the newspaper obituary to boast about his dead son's grades and achievements which I realized seemed to be the only thing my dad was to him. Just in case you were wondering, yes, we are Asian. My mother was grieving and trying to find a way to make ends meet and my grandfather graciously offered to help her control my father's 2 businesses to help support us. My mother agreed because she didn't have any experience. While we grew up, the 2 businesses didn't provide much for us, likely because my father was one of the big reasons they were thriving. Mom was in and out of multiple jobs just to keep us floating. My grandfather offered to help put me and my siblings through school. I managed to score some scholarships with some good schools growing up so thankfully he didn't have to do as much for me, but we were really glad that he helped out with my siblings. After I made it out of school, I found out that my family was broke and my 2 siblings were still making their way through medical school. My sister even offered to stop and just get a job, but I told her to keep going because she was doing so well and that she deserved to graduate. My grandparents had cut us off because they didn't approve of the directions my siblings took in life, especially my sister who was, for them, too female to have a career in medicine. My grandmother is a bit of a misogynist. Why are you wasting your time and money becoming a doctor? You're just going to have children and quit. I was working as a high school teacher when I was contacted by one of my dad's old business partners for one of his companies. After I asked him about how the company was doing, he told me that my grandfather who was still in control of my father's shares was siphoning money from the company for himself and he was earning way more than he was giving me and my siblings for our education. So all our lives he'd been making us feel indebted to him for money that was supposed to be ours to begin with and he lied to us by telling us that dad's companies weren't making any money for us at all. We also realized that when he cut us off, he was cutting us off from our own money forcing my siblings to drop out and give up careers that they'd been working their whole lives for. What's worse is that this was our father's money and we know that he'd wanted it to help us provide for our futures even after he passed and here comes his asshole father basically pooping on his legacy for his own enrichment. I even found out that he used his position to take possession of the company's office space and force them to set up shop in a smaller cheaper office while renting the original space out under his own name to the company's competitors to make money from them too. All while I had to work multiple jobs to help my mother and siblings pay the bills. Cue revenge. My grandfather's biggest weakness has always been his pride. In fact, I suspect that he wanted us to think he was helping support us out of his own pocket because he wanted everyone to think he was some kind of hero when in reality he was financially choking us. I recognize that no matter what my grandfather said, my siblings, my mother and I were legally the owners of my father's company shares. So after having a statement signed by the 3 of them, I approached all the board of directors sans my grandfather and let them know that I was now that sole representative of my late dad's estate. My grandfather also made himself chairman of the board. According to the company records, he did no work for the company at all so the position was just a name that allowed him to receive money. So I convinced them that since he was only chairman as representative of my father's estate, that made me the chairman, I did not intend to keep the position because I did not have the experience for it. Then I contacted other members of my extended family about my grandfather's unethical practices with the company's office space. He was eventually pressured by them into evicting the company's main competitor from their office space. Serves them right for conniving with my grandfather to take the company's old office space. At the next board meeting, I prepared for the moment I'd been waiting my entire life for. When he entered the conference room, to preside over the meeting as the chairman, he found his chair facing away from the table with all the board members already seated at the table. And like a Bond villain, I spun the chair around to reveal to him that I'd been the one sitting there the entire meeting. I told him that the company and my family no longer needed him and that I'd be taking control over representation of my father's estate. Do you know that I'm the one who put him and his siblings through school? He said in shock. I only went no. Dad did. The look of sheer embarrassment on his face was perfect. I've never seen him look defeated my entire life until that moment and this sort of satisfaction could not be achieved by simply ratting him out. I stepped down from the chairman position and took a job in the company's treasury department as a bookkeeper with a meager salary, but at least now any profit sharing or dividends that the company released would go where my father wanted it to go. And finally, one of the first decisions I got to make as a board member before stepping down was to give my mother a permanent job that she deserved. My grandfather is now jobless. He spends all his time at home and because he spent his life being selfish and self-centered, He has no friends. All he had going for him was being able to power trip over other people and boasting about his assets and achievements. Even my grandmother has had it with him, and the two don't even sleep in the same room anymore. I hope he lives the rest of his short life regretting that he didn't live his life with more compassion and humility. People who have woken up from a coma, what was the reason? I was in a car crash. I was 19. So a friend and my boyfriend drove me to the hospital because I had experienced chest pains and extreme pain throughout my whole body, and we needed some help, and the hospital was the closest place. So I was sitting in the back of their car, and suddenly there was a red light and it turned yellow, and that other car crashed into ours. It all happened so fast. 1 second our car was upright, the next it was turned 180 and flipped over. I remember looking out of the window and seeing the sky, but also the underside of our car. That was the last thing I saw, and then everything went dark. I woke up in the hospital with a neck brace on and my family around me. I had no idea how long I had been out. I just knew I had aches all over my body, and I asked what had happened, and they said, "You had a car crash." That is all they said, and I did not press them for more detail. They then explained to me that I had some minor injuries, but the main problem was that I had broken my neck, and because of that I would be paralyzed from the neck down from the accident, and I would be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I cried for a long time. I was only 19 and I was about to be paralyzed from the neck down and stuck in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. It upset me a lot. I stayed in the hospital for 4 weeks, and I went through many surgeries to make sure that I wouldn't be paralyzed for life, and 3 weeks after the accident I was able to go home. Fast forward 3 years and I was able to walk and function to normal standards with a wheelchair, but not everyday life stuff. I got a new boyfriend and we had a pretty violent relationship, and every day I wanted to leave, but every time I said something he convinced me to stay. One day he came home with a surprise. He had bought me a new car, a convertible. I loved it, a convertible car with a roof so I could actually go out places that I couldn't before due to my wheelchair. He made me promise that I would not tell anyone, especially my family. The next day he came home with a second car and he told me to keep it in a place no one knew about. He made me promise that I would never tell anyone about the car and about the place it was kept. I said yes. I didn't really think about it. It was my boyfriend and I trusted him. A month later he took me to the place where the second car was kept. He took my wheelchair and I walked the rest of the way with him helping me. He opened a door and I saw the car and I was so happy. He started talking about how this car was for me, so I could go places on my own whenever I wanted and start to live a little bit more outside of my house. I was so happy, and I didn't realize we were leaving the house with no wheelchair, and I remember asking him where the car was and he laughed and told me to follow him. When we reached the main road he told me he was tired and needed to rest, so he told me to go and try the car out. I was crying and so happy, and I didn't notice that he was no longer by my side and that he had left me there. I started the car, and this is probably where the accident happened. I started the car, put it in drive and stepped on the accelerator, and I accelerated really quickly. I don't remember much of that day, but I do remember accelerating really fast and then waking up at the hospital. I lost a lot of memories from that day. My parents told me that I was in the hospital for 5 weeks, and during those weeks I had an operation on my brain because it had slowed down my brain, because during the collision my brain had hit against the car roof really hard. My memory was really slow and I couldn't remember anything about the accident. Whenever my parents tried to tell me about it or the newspapers that were filled with the accident and my picture, I blacked out and would faint. After a month I started getting memories of the accident. But why did I have memories of the accident? Remember, I had broken my neck, so I wasn't supposed to remember anything, but I did? The first memory I got was very confused, but as time went on they became more and more clear. The first memory was a memory of my boyfriend opening the door to the car and telling me to get in. He was smiling at me and he gave me a kiss on the cheek and he said, "You deserve it. You went through so much. Go have fun." And I can't remember if I said anything or not. I don't think I did. The second memory was me being in the car and my boyfriend sitting in the passenger seat. He was talking to me about something, but I couldn't really hear him, and all I really remember is him looking at me and he gave me a kiss goodnight. But like when you kiss a baby on the forehead, it was very soft. The last thing I remember was him looking at me once more, and then something black appeared on his face like he was very tired, and I remember he was sleeping and drooling. I know that my boyfriend was blackmailed by my family into making it seem like I was paralyzed for life after the accident by threatening to break his legs so he couldn't walk ever again. I know he forced me into that car because my family knew I was going to talk about everything, so the car was a way for them to make me not notice the fact I was being forced into the car, and to make me believe it was a gift so I wouldn't bring up Adriana, the name of my dog I had when I was young and that nobody knew about, and me going on a car ride. I remember feeling conflicted when I was in that car. I knew something wasn't right, but I also wanted to go on a car ride. Now, I'm a paralegal and I deal with laws and cases. I have looked up this exact case before, and the result was, the driver of the car was speeding and was distracted and was deemed to be the main reason of the crash. What is weird is that my family made it seem as if I was the one that crashed because of the way they told me the story and the tone they used. They also claimed I was distracted and speeding, but they didn't mention anything about substances being present in my system. The entire accident from start to finish hasn't even been discovered yet, and the case is still ongoing. I know that none of those details were released to the media because if everything was released I would remember. My case is the exact opposite. The press made it look like I was the one involved and nothing about the other side was talked about. The only thing that I remember about the accident that was actually true was that I was the one who crashed. But how do I convince anyone? Now I am depressed and my entire life seems to be a lie, and I am starting to believe all of my memories are lies. I have a lot of resentment towards my parents because they knew what was going to happen and they just let me be the fall guy. I've been wearing my girlfriend's clothes in secret. Please help. I've been hiding a huge secret from everyone in my life for a while now, and recently I've been thinking about coming clean to my girlfriend about what I've been doing. You might judge me since what I'm doing is unconventional for a man, but I hope my girlfriend feels differently. I live in an apartment, and my girlfriend stays with her parents, but she leaves some of her clothes and shoes at my place. I was always curious about how women's clothes felt, especially their skin-tight clothes. One day, I tried on my girlfriend's sheer pantyhose, just to see what it was like. I loved the way it felt on my legs, making them look slimmer. This is when I got interested in wearing her clothes. Over time, I started wearing her lingerie and high-heeled shoes. I would walk around my apartment dressed up like this, even when I was doing chores. Sometimes, when I felt really stressed, I would even sleep in her pantyhose. I find it comforting to dress this way when I'm feeling feminine. I'm not 100% sure what is so alluring and comforting about women's clothing to me, but I don't want to stop since I'm not really hurting anyone with what I'm doing. I want to talk to my girlfriend about it because she's a very understanding and supportive person. I hope she'll be okay with it, and maybe we can even dress up together. I have gone over what her reaction might be in my head, and the more I think about it the more I think she will be understanding and accepting of me. Until then, I'll continue doing what I've been doing. I like falling asleep wearing pantyhose, and I hope this doesn't sound strange to anyone. This is the first time I'm sharing this with anyone. I live in a very conservative country, and not many people here understand or accept this, so I'm a little nervous. As a doctor, what was the most incredible example of misdiagnosis that you have ever seen? What was the outcome for the patient and the doctor? Many years ago, training in adolescent health in my home state of Mississippi, I saw a young black man brought in by his mother. She was frustrated because she felt her son had been misdiagnosed as mentally ill and was to be hospitalized in one of the state's precious few psychiatric facility beds for teens. He had been at a Job Corps facility in another state, a type of vocational education for students who had had problems in public school, but had been sent home after developing neck stiffness, presumably from muscular strain, that failed to improve with standard treatment. His family clinician had agreed with the Job Corps staff that his symptoms appeared to be psychosomatic, and he'd been started on psychotropic medications with no benefit. Thus, hospitalization was felt necessary. A pediatric resident physician examined the young man. He was wearing a soft cervical collar, the kind mild whiplash patients use. Apart from noting nothing wrong with his neck, structurally intact, normal passive movements by the doctor, her only finding was a slightly swollen and painful wrist, without any history of injury. That helped us make the correct diagnosis. Tenosynovitis of the wrist is a classic feature of disseminated, widespread, gonococcal infection. The young man had been sexually active in Job Corps and was infected with gonorrhea, confirmed by testing. After treatment he improved rapidly, as did his mood, though he still had some neck stiffness. And though we identified a physical reason for his symptoms, I still had to convince his clinician not to hospitalize him for psychiatric problems. Mom was right. Dad shut himself inside his bunker at the start of the pandemic. 3 months ago, we lost contact with him. Dad shut himself inside his bunker at the beginning of 2020. He said the world was about to end, and when we didn't believe him, he told us to wake up. Dad wanted us to join him, and when we told him no, he called us brainwashed. He purchased the land before I was born. All I remember from him during childhood are the weekends at the bunker. Constantly renovating it and stockpiling it with everything he would need to survive down there. We couldn't stop him. He wasn't the best dad, not even a good one, but it was sad to see him go all the same. He was excited, even though he thought that civilization was about to collapse. We had to set up an old radio to keep in touch with him. He didn't trust mobile phones. We didn't hear from him often, just once a month, sometimes less. The last time he radioed in, he said he had found a hidden door. He was going to see where it went. That was 3 months ago. You think he's okay? My sister said. He wasn't in great health. I told him. We sat in the car, on our way to check up on him, driving through the heat wave. His radio might have broken down, I said. Let's not assume the worst, but I felt worried too. There was something strange about that hidden door, and his tone when he mentioned it. It didn't sit right with me. But maybe it was just the heat and the endless desert around us that played tricks on my mind. I couldn't really tell. It was dark when we arrived. Dad's truck stood where he had left it, beneath some tarp that blew in the chilly, sand-carrying wind. We turned on our flashlights and walked to the cliff above the bunker. The steel door was made to withstand a nuclear blast. Luckily, I owned the only spare key in existence. Before I used it, I banged on the door as hard as I could and yelled for Dad. I worried he would mistake us for intruders and shoot us. If he was confused, and if it was dark, it was a real possibility. I banged again and yelled at the top of my lungs. Dad, are you there? It's me, Josh. Evelyn is here as well. I don't think he can hear you, Evelyn said. I nodded. Dad. I'm going to open the door now. I was 17 the last time I was here. Back then it was the Muslims that were going to end civilization as we knew it. Before that, it was the Russians. Now it was China. There was always something threatening his beloved freedom, and yet he was never truly free. My sister put her hand on my wrist just as I was about to unlock the door. You know, she said. Maybe we should just call the authorities after all and. No, I said. He'll fight them. I unlocked the heavy door. A rancid smell escaped the darkness inside. It was the odor of death. I recognized it from when Dad tried semicolon and ultimately failed semicolon to learn how to hunt and let a reindeer carcass rot on the property for weeks. My sister had already stopped visiting him by then. I didn't tell her what the smell reminded me of. She covered her nose with her shirt. We descended the spiral stairs. It creaked for each step we took, almost as if it was about to fall apart. I tried the light switch at the bottom. The click echoed throughout the long corridor leading to the living area. Nothing happened. I realized that the batteries, which he charged by the use of an old exercise bike, were dead. That meant he was most likely dead as well. The generator could be broken, I said. But maybe you should wait back here, just in case. You know, I pointed my flashlight in front of me. The light was too weak to reach the end of the corridor. On the way here I had felt ready. I felt sad, the kind of empty sadness you feel after the death of a parent that was never any good, but I didn't feel worried. Now, on the other hand, while staring into the dark corridor that I used to run through as a kid, I was afraid. The fear reminded me of how my childhood night terrors used to start. They always crept up on me in the darkness, grew with the grotesque shadows on my bedroom ceiling. I'm not letting you go in there alone, Evelyn said. We stayed together. We walked into the darkness. The foul smell intensified for every step we took, and so did my heartbeat. I was glad my sister didn't stay behind. The bunker seemed so much smaller than I remembered it, much more cramped. The asymmetry between my memories and reality made everything feel off somehow, just as if the bunker was merely a model of the real thing. But it wasn't. I had just grown up. The Confederate flag greeted us at the end of the corridor. It hung on the concrete wall. It looked pale in the hot spot of the flashlight, almost like a phantom. And, of course, in many ways it was. A ghost from a time long ago. Or perhaps a corpse brought back to life. An abomination. It reminded me of Dad more than anything else. You have to be seriously confused to praise freedom as much as Dad and hang that symbol of lesser freedom in the world on your wall, Evelyn said. He wanted to protect his freedom so much that he built a prison for himself. I removed the light from the flag, leaving only darkness. You bet he was confused. We entered the main chamber. It was overfilled with litter and clutter. Empty cans semicolon, both the food and beer kinds semicolon lay scattered across the sticky floor. We had to take large steps not to step on any of the trash. That's weird. Evelyn pointed her flashlight at the small dining table. Look, my hair stood up on my neck before I even realized what she meant. The table was set for 3 people. I didn't say anything for a moment, trying to process what I was seeing, and just when I was about to speak my sister interrupted me. Who the fuck was here with him? We don't know, I began. I mean, he might have left the old plates on the table and a sound of something falling to the ground came from one of the other rooms further into the bunker. I pointed my light in its direction but couldn't see what made it. Dad, I yelled. It's me, Josh. You there? No response. I'm afraid, Evelyn whispered. Something isn't right. I only vaguely heard what she said. My focus was on something else. Something on the wall on the other end of the room. That's not supposed to be there. I slowly walked toward it. That must have been what he talked about over the radio. Dad had hacked away a layer of concrete, for whatever reason, and uncovered a rusty, metal door behind it. It stood ajar. A lukewarm, musty breeze came out of it. My sister walked up to me as I carefully pried the door open with the back of my flashlight. I felt my heart in my throat. I could hear my sister begging for us to leave, almost in tears. But I needed to know what was behind that door. It was imperative to understand what had happened here. I needed to know. I needed closure. What in heaven's name? Evelyn looked over my shoulder. Why is this here? Behind the door was a room about the size of a broom cupboard. It was unremarkable except for a circular hole in the middle of the floor. I shone my light into it, but I couldn't see the bottom. Just as I thought it was big enough for a person, my sister said, "Do you think he fell?" Drops of sweat from my forehead fell down the pit. I felt dizzy and stepped back, afraid I would fall inside. My sister picked up a can filled with some rotten beans and threw it down the hole. It clattered against the walls as it bounced from one side to another. The sound faded away until we couldn't hear it anymore. There was no indication it touched down at the bottom. I stretched out my hand and held it above the opening. "It's warm," I said. "The air, I mean, maybe he fell." Evelyn stepped back, almost as if she were convinced. "Can we please get out of here?" She reached for my arm. "We can return with the police. Please." "Josh, it wasn't dark when Dad found this," I said. "He would have seen the hole. Josh? Please, just give me a moment to think." I walked toward the hallway that led to the other rooms, desperately hoping to find him. For some reason, it was important for me to see him. To be able to leave without wondering. I needed to know that he was truly dead. I just want to. I stopped myself after I accidentally pointed the flashlight on the floor in the middle of the hallway, revealing a pair of feet. I think I found him. I ran up to the body. "Wait," Evelyn yelled and reluctantly followed me to avoid being left alone. It wasn't Dad. I screamed upon the realization. My mind couldn't comprehend what I had just seen. I spun around and tried to run away, completely acting on instinct, and crashed into my sister. She grabbed me, kept me still, and as she looked behind me, down at the dead body on the floor, she began to cry while her hands trembled uncontrollably against my shoulders. "Oh my God," she said. How? How is it possible?" "It's you. Let's get a fuck out of here," I said. "Move." There was nothing that could explain this, and the more my mind tried to semicolon moving in an endless loop doing so semicolon the dread grew inside me. I only got a glimpse of the body before I panicked, but my sister was right. The half-rotten face was the same as mine, with a bullet hole in the middle of the forehead. We stumbled our way through the living area, tipping over chairs and kicking cans all over the place, and just as we were about to get out of the mess a familiar voice echoed through the hallway we had just escaped. "Josh." It was Dad. We both stopped in our tracks. "Is that you?" "Josh, Dad?" I yelled back. "What the fuck is going on here?" "Don't worry." It sounded like he was at the other end of the bunker, possibly inside the storeroom. "I killed the son of a bitch, put a bullet right between his eyes. Come out from there," I yelled. "We have to leave, it's not safe here." Silence. "Something is wrong," Evelyn said. "I don't think." "Dad," I yelled. "Come out." "I can't move," Dad said. "I'm stuck under a shelf." "I'll need your help, son." I turned to my sister. Go back up. I'll get that old bastard out of there. We'll be right behind you, okay? Think, Josh. Evelyn begged. You think he's been stuck under a shelf for? I should have listened, but even after what we had just seen I just couldn't bring myself to even consider something as outlandish as what my sister was suggesting. It was simply too far-fetched, too unbelievable to penetrate all my layers of presumptions about reality. It couldn't be, it just couldn't. Hence, I ran back to the hallway, yelling for my sister to get back up to the surface and wait for us there. I'm coming, Dad. I only slowed down to carefully step over the corpse that bore my face. Perhaps, I thought, it was just a coincidence. A burglar that just happened to look like me. After all, the face had begun to rot. It wasn't obviously me. I felt stupid and I almost convinced myself that it was just my childhood fear of the dark coming back to life down here. And then, just as I was about to walk past the small composting toilet that stood inside a small room at the end of the hallway, I stopped. Shivers spread across my entire body, paralyzing me. Dad sat on the toilet. His gun still hung from his trigger finger and his brain was splattered across the wall behind him. He had his journal in his lap, covered in blood. Josh, Dad yelled from the darkness. Help me. I was frozen in place, both by fear and confusion, unable to make any decisions. Come on, Josh. Dad kept yelling. I need your help, son. My mind was racing. There was no way of knowing who was who. When I heard Dad's voice yelling for help while watching his dead body, nothing but absolute terror reverberated inside me. I slowly reached for the journal in Dad's lap and grabbed it, hoping it would shed some light on the situation. I was just about to open it when my sister screamed. I ran back, this time jumping over my doppelganger's body, and found her looking at something at the corner of the main chamber. I told you to, I said, but changed my mind. Are you okay? What happened? She cried. It's me. Crawled up in the corner was her naked, dead body. Her head had been twisted in such a way that the neck had been broken. There's something seriously wicked going on here, I said. Dad shot himself in the head, a long time ago by the looks of it, and yet he keeps yelling for help. Let's get back to the car, now. We drove away from the bunker as fast as we could, leaving whatever was still alive down there yelling for help. My sister insisted on staying at my place for a few days. I didn't mind having her around. We shared an experience no one else could relate to, and we needed each other to overcome the trauma. It took a day for me to build up the courage to open Dad's journal. It began with his usual deranged conspiracy theories. I caused my girlfriend's eating disorder. Am I the jerk for adding olive oil to my girlfriend's meals? I, 24, have been with my girlfriend Mari, 22, for 2 years. Mari is a fitness buff. She's all about healthy eating, exercise, and weightlifting, and I love that about her. The problem started a few months ago. Mari used to have really bad body image problems around when we first started going out. It was harmful, bad for her, and bad for her mind. She's taken incredible strides to fix her body image problems, such as therapy and slowly incorporating more food into her meals. She hasn't had a flare-up of those problems for the last year and I am very proud of her. However, as of late, I feel that her body image problems have flared up with some changes in her lifestyle. She wakes up at 5 a.m. every day to go on a run, her portions are considerably smaller, and she goes weightlifting 5 days a week with Pilates on the other 2. To me, it seemed her intense and strict regimen was from her body image problems because she shed off the curves she gained when she started her recovery. I really liked her curves and she's become rather lean now. I voiced my concerns to her, and she told me that she's currently on a cut following her bulk. This is where I might be the jerk. I was still very worried about her, so I started sneaking olive oil into her meals. I do a majority of the cooking, but she preps the ingredients for her meals, weighs and measures for macros in her tracking app. She isn't allergic or anything, but I've been adding enough to add a considerable amount of extra calories. This has been going on for about 3 months and she's frustrated that she's plateaued in her progress and even gained a bit of weight, that is until she found the empty olive oil bottles in the garage bin. Mari does the grocery shopping, and she asked me about the bottles. There were about 5 from this week, because she does not recall buying or even seeing olive oil in our cabinets. I usually sneak the bottles off to dispose of them but hadn't had the chance, so I came clean and told her that when I cook I add some olive oil and just didn't tell her. She got very upset with me and asked why I would do that. I told her that I voiced my concern about her fitness obsession many times but she brushed me off, so as her partner, I took measures into my own hands. She's currently staying at her sister's. How I saw it was that I was protecting my partner from another downward spiral, but my brother, who is a gym rat, said that I was a jerk for doing that to her, regardless of my concerns. Am I the a-hole? Tomorrow, I'm going to completely destroy his life. We've been together for 3 long years, and we had plans to get married once things settled down. I had dreams of starting a family with him. I loved him more than anyone else in the entire world. I made countless sacrifices for him, leaving my home behind, rejecting job opportunities so I could be by his side, and supporting him as he went back to school. I gave him my everything. And what does he do? He cheats on me. I discovered it a little over a month ago. The despicable scumbag got careless, and I found out he was cheating on me with not just 1, but 2 different women. One of them happens to be a teaching assistant at his university, while the other is his best friend's girlfriend. I'm beyond furious. As I write this, I'm struggling to contain my anger. I loved him so deeply, he was my entire world. But now, I'm determined to reduce his world to ashes. I've been financially supporting both of us ever since he quit his job last year to pursue his education. Despite that, I was more than willing to help him out since I earn enough to sustain us both. The only small consolation is that the student loans are in his name and have no connection to me. It will be painful to cut off this scumbag completely, but I will survive. For a whole month, I've bided my time, meticulously planning what I call the day as world burns. Tomorrow, we're hosting a party. I've arranged for his family to attend, although regrettably, my own family won't be able to make it. I've already packed all the valuable belongings into a suitcase, which now rests in the trunk of my car. Tomorrow, during the event, my brother will discreetly take the car, registered under my name, and drive it to our parents' house. The joint account, which actually contains only my money, has already been emptied. The event itself will seem wonderful to him. He'll believe it's to announce our engagement to his family. Little does he know that I'll be making a different announcement, one about my departure from his life. I've already secured a job out of state and found a new place to live. I'll start by revealing his true nature to everyone present. I'll share the screenshots of his explicit conversations, where he solicited his friend's girlfriend to engage in degrading acts, among other depraved fantasies he concocted. I'll hand him the eviction notice as well since I've already terminated our lease. We need to vacate the premises by the end of this month. I'll inform him that I've already reported his affair with the teaching assistant from one of his previous semesters to the university, although I'm disappointed that I won't get to witness the repercussions firsthand. Additionally, his friend has a message for him, one that I'll deliver, stating that the entire friend group wants nothing to do with him ever again. And with that, I will leave. I will not look back. I will set his life on fire and walk away, never to return. My husband told me he hopes I died during surgery. I had bariatric surgery in 2017, RNY. I'll be honest, I'm one of the ones they warn you about, in that it nearly killed me. One of the connections came apart within 24 to 48 hours after surgery, and I developed sepsis as well abscesses that required emergency surgery and a stay in the ICU. My husband, at the time, seemed supportive of my choice for surgery. However, it appears he wasn't, because 2 months after my emergency, he separated from me, and we ended up divorced. I was told after by the doctor following me that approximately 50% of marriages end after one partner has the surgery. Kinda wish they'd told me that before? I feel it's because the other partner believes that their new spouse won't want them, will leave, will change, etc. And frankly, they're right. I feel better, stronger, more myself at the weight I am now. The end of my marriage ended up being the beginning of my real, adult life. I got to know myself, what I like, what I don't like, what my priorities are. It really ended up being the absolute best thing that ever happened to me. For you, I want you to consider what you want your life to look like. It really sounds like you love yourself and want to be the best, happiest version of you. Your spouse should support that. Is there support with your hospital/doctor for couples counseling? Would your husband consider it? And, if he wouldn't, you need to ask yourself what the most important thing to you is: making him happy and you staying miserable, or you being your own person and living your very best life? Wishing you the very best with your surgery, your schooling, and your future, whatever that may be.
Mother schedules her anniversary party the same day as my wedding. I feel like I'm in some sort of crazy wedding movie where the parents of the bride do everything they can to mess up the big day. I got a text from my dad's parents on Wednesday. They said, "Hi, we've thought a lot about it, and we've decided to go to your mom and dad's anniversary instead of your wedding. We love you and wish you the best for your future. We know it's a happy time and hope all your plans and dreams come true. Keep in touch and let us know if you need anything. Lots of love, Gran and Grandpa." I'm really angry. I just told them I was disappointed, asked them not to talk to me anymore, and then blocked their number. I had a feeling something strange was going on when I got a message from someone who probably wasn't coming to the wedding. She said she hadn't gotten the invitation yet but asked me to message her. So I did, and I asked if she was coming. She said she'd let me know because my mom's anniversary party was on the same day. I just didn't know what this anniversary party was. Guys, my parents got married in December. My wedding is at the end of September. The two dates aren't even close. My mom sent me an email the same day my grandparents texted me. I won't share it here because it's really long, but she talked about having a party with her close family and friends next weekend. Those are the same people I invited. The people we really want will be there, and that's what matters. But seriously, who does that? My uncle and his family also said they're not coming, but they're strange and I don't care if they come. He texted me, like a month and a half after I asked, and said they couldn't make it. He also said he hopes things get better between me and my parents in the future. I didn't ask for his advice. I just wanted to know if his kid was still going to be my flower girl. Well, at least now I know for sure that she won't show up unexpectedly. That's one less thing to worry about. The wedding plans are coming together, and I think it's going to be okay.
I want to sue my son's deadbeat mom. I got a girl pregnant and she wanted to get a baby garbage, but I didn't want that. She ended up not getting one, but now she is not involved at all. We weren't in a serious relationship when she got pregnant. She has never met our son. Even after the birth she had no desire to see him. We went to court to figure custody and support could be figured out, and I have 100% full legal and physical custody. Her name is on the birth certificate, but she has no custody and no right to visitation or to make things like medical or education decisions. She didn't want any of that. Every month she pays 125% of the court-ordered child support. She says that if I ever marry someone who wants to adopt him she will agree, but until then she'll pay support. It's been this way since our son was born. I'm raising our son all on my own. He is 18 months old now and he has never met her, and I don't even have any photos of her even. I am burned out and hate being a single parent. I love my son but I resent him. My family tries to help when they can, but I do it most of the time. I would never hurt or neglect him, but I am exhausted all the time. I tried to go to court to give her split custody, but because she wanted a baby garbage and I didn't, and she made it clear she would never be involved after the birth. And because we went to court when he was 6 months old, but because we already went after he was born and agreed on things, and now she pays more support than his court order. The judge said he can't force her to look after him. I haven't seen her in almost a year, and the last I heard she has a tummy tuck and laser stretch marks treatment and is working at a gym. She also told her friends and family she is an egg donor and not a mother. She is a deadbeat mom and the court won't do anything and is forcing me to struggle as a single parent. Do I have any legal remedies here? Police officers, what is the kindest thing a suspect has ever said to you? Over the years, there have been several people, including suspects, offenders, witnesses, and victims, who have said kind things to me. But the one that comes to mind is probably the most recent. As a captain, I'm not often out on patrol and I make very few traffic stops. A few weeks ago, however, I saw a vehicle traveling the wrong direction in a traffic circle. Given the danger presented, I stopped the motorist and saw that the vehicle was driven by a tiny African American lady of about 65, and that she was confused and upset by the unfamiliar traffic control device into which she had driven. I helped get her turned around and pulled to the side of the road where we were both safe. Pursuant to department policy, I asked her for her license, registration and proof of insurance. She paused for a moment and then started looking through her purse, center console and glove compartment for the requested documentation. Based on my experience, this suggested to me that she did not have one or more of the documents I had asked her to produce. I asked her if she had a driver's license and she admitted that her license was suspended. I couldn't help but notice the tears welling up in her eyes. I had already noticed that her license plate was expired, as was her motor vehicle inspection sticker. I then asked if her automobile was insured, and she told me it was not. In my jurisdiction, unless there are exigent circumstances, a vehicle found to be uninsured is to be towed and impounded. In addition, a motorist found to be driving under suspension may, at the discretion of the officer, be arrested, and should not be permitted to drive away from the traffic stop absent exigent circumstances which mitigate against preventing the motorist from driving any further. The lady had tears streaming down her cheeks, knowing she had a problem. She was wearing a business outfit, so I asked her where she was going, thinking that I might be able to drop her off if time was a problem. She explained that the previous week, she was hired by a local hospital and that day was to be her first at her new job. She explained that she had lost her home and job in August of 2016 when our area suffered through the worst flood to affect the area in modern history. Approximately 80% of the homes and businesses in our area flooded during the event. Many had never flooded before, were not in flood zones, and consequently, many families and businesses were left with nothing, following the inundation. This lady was one of those. She understood that she was in trouble, and she understood that despite her good intentions, she was breaking the law. But there was no anger or bitterness. In her face, I saw only resolve and determination. She never once suggested that she deserved a break. She didn't hint at leniency. She expressed no self-pity and did not seek to shift the blame. While I may not have shown it, I was very impressed with the way she was handling the experience. I told the lady, whom I'll call Miss Smith, to have a seat in her car, turn on her air conditioner, as it was about 95, and that I would be back with her as quickly as possible. I then returned to my unit and checked her registration and driver's license. I determined that her license was suspended due to her inability to honor a payment plan with the DMV that she had reached in order to resolve the fines assessed to her when her insurance lapsed. She was uninsured. Her history showed that over the last several years, her insurance lapsed several times. However, she always managed to have her insurance reinstated, but the administrative fees had built up over time. Her registration had expired 2 months earlier. However, with a suspended driver's license, she could not renew her registration or obtain an updated motor vehicle inspection sticker. Clearly, she was in a vicious spiral, and putting her in jail or doing anything to cost her the new job would not be helpful. I carefully considered my options, recognizing that my obligation to protect and serve includes keeping people without the mandatory liability insurance off of the road. Her failure to have the required insurance presented a problem for me. Under our law, were she to have an at-fault accident and it was discovered that I had stopped her and failed to take the appropriate action, I could be held responsible. If I towed her car, she would likely lose her new job, which was going to pay her enough to get the required insurance, take care of her suspended driver's license, and generally make her life better for the first time in 2 years. As I sat there considering what to do, I suddenly remembered something. I got out of my unit, walked up to the car and looked in the back seat. There, behind the front passenger seat, was a rear-facing baby seat, buckled snugly into place. I meant to ask you about the baby seat, I told her. Oh, she replied. That's for my grandbaby, she told me. I take her to daycare each morning so that my daughter can make it to nursing school on time. This is our only car. Do they live with you all the time? I asked. Yes, sir. They're my best friends, she said with a smile. I thanked her and returned to my unit. I smiled too and thought to myself, exigent circumstances. Can't tow that car if there are exigent circumstances. I prepared the lady a citation for driving under suspension. I hated to do it, but the only discretion we have in such cases is jail or a misdemeanor summons. I did, however, exercise my discretion and prepared a warning for the expired driver's license and expired vehicle inspection sticker. I then made a quick phone call before walking back to her car, ticket book in hand. As the little lady waited to hear her fate, I began. Okay, Miss Smith, here is where we are, I told her. I have to issue you a citation for driving under suspension. I have no choice. However, you're not being arrested, only fined. She asked me how much the fine would be and I told her that I did not know, but that I had called the clerk of court, asked that they let her pay over a period of 6 months, and that they had agreed. I then handed her the citation and asked her to sign where indicated. She signed and then remembered the other charges. "Is there another ticket?" she asked. "No ma'am," I told her. "Apparently, I am out of tickets and don't have time to go and get some more." She seemed confused and asked, "I know you have to tow my car, Captain. I was just wondering if there is any way that you can let me get to work first. I can park it around back where nobody will see it and you can tow it from there, if it's not too much trouble." "Well, Miss Smith, it looks like your car isn't going to be towed today. As it turns out, there are exigent circumstances that allow me to let you keep your car. But you have to get insurance within 30 days. She didn't understand, so I explained that since there is an infant in their house, since they had only one car, and since that car was the child's sole means of transportation to daycare, such a situation created exigent circumstances which allowed me to decline to tow the car, provided that I had a reasonable belief that the required insurance would be obtained within 30 days. She assured me that they would get the insurance they needed. I wished her good luck and told her to be safe, and I turned around to walk back to my unit as the tears started rolling down her cheeks again. Before I could walk away, however, Miss Smith called out to me, "Captain Sharp." I turned back to her. "I don't know if you're allowed or not, but would it be okay if I gave you a hug?" I told her I would love a hug, and it was the best hug of the day. "Would it be okay if I gave you a hug?" Was one of the kindest things that a suspect ever said to me. What is something you've overheard while pretending to sleep that you wish you didn't? My very conservative family is big on going on family vacations. My parents never liked to spend a lot of money though, so for 1 week during the summer, my sister and I found ourselves in a cheap, 2-bedroom cottage far away from civilization. One year, my ultra-conservative parents allowed my sister to bring her boyfriend to the 2-bedroom cottage for a few days. My parents slept in one bedroom and of course, they demanded that I be a gentleman and let my sister sleep in the one remaining bedroom. Whatever. I'm pretty laid back, but the fold-out couch sagged something fierce, so when I centered myself on the bed, the sides were practically encompassing me. My conservative parents, of course, were not about to let my sister's boyfriend sleep in the bedroom with my sister. Oh no. He was fortunate enough to get a tiny, old, rusty cot which my parents set up right next to me by my luxurious fold-out couch. We had electricity, and we had running water, but that was about it. There was never that much of anything to do, but I enjoy reading, so I didn't mind family vacations. One night, I was on the fold-out couch reading a particularly good book. It was around 1 a.m. when I finally turned off the lamp and decided to get some sleep. So I turn off the lamp, put my head down on the pillow, and then a few seconds later, I hear the slider door open. Apparently, my sister and her boyfriend were outside drinking by the campfire. They were both giggling as they came into the cottage, and by their failed attempts at whispering, I could tell that they were both at least a little intoxicated. Not my business. I didn't want to make things awkward for them, so I pretended to be asleep. I had my eyes closed and was keeping my breathing even. A few seconds later, I heard them kiss goodnight and they went their separate ways. My sister went to the bedroom, and my sister's boyfriend plopped on the cot right next to where I was pretending to be asleep. So not even a minute later, I'm half drifting off to sleep and I start hearing noises in the direction of the cot. It sounded like fapping. Very cautious fapping. I was around 18 years old at this point. I've been around the block. I know how to recognize the telltale sounds of fapping when I hear them. So yeah. My now brother-in-law was on the cot right next to me smacking his meat to images of my sister. The cot was really effing small. I'm pretty sure my sister's boyfriend's legs were dangling off the edge of the cot, but in any case, the entire cot would shift and squeak every couple of seconds that he was doing the dirty. I didn't want to make things awkward and interrupt the guy, so I made the ultimate bro sacrifice. I kept my breathing even, and let the guy finish. Looking back, it was kind of funny because occasionally he would get carried away and realize that he had made too much noise. He would pause to listen and see if I had woken up, but I kept my breathing sort of heavy and even throughout the ordeal, so he eventually would get confident and keep going. Towards the end, the cot was practically like hopping up and down, and then things finally grew silent. I knew he had finished, and sure enough, a few seconds later, he made the rookie mistake of accidentally letting go of his sweatpants and I heard the classic thwop as they came back to his stomach. So yeah, I had a hard time looking for my sister's boyfriend the other next morning. I'm dating my sister's bully, but I think my sister is blowing it out of proportion. My younger sister Anne had a bully in high school named Andrea. It started off as mostly name-calling, and then became physical. My sister would come home with bruises sometimes, and the school did nothing about it. I always supported Anne through it. By the time they got out of high school I still absolutely hated Andrea. Then 2 years ago I met her at a local cafe where she started working. She ended up apologizing to me for how she treated my sister. She'd been wanting to apologize to Anne but she had no way of contacting her. I still kept my guard up when I saw her after that, but I felt like she'd really matured since high school and told my sister about her. Anne wasn't interested in any apologies, which I get, but I decided to try convince Anne that Andrea has changed and maybe they could even be friends. I kept talking to Andrea and she asked me out on a date after a few months. I figured my sister would be happy for me, regardless of her and Andrea's past. Either way, I never told Anne. Our first date went really well and I was falling more and more for her. She's everything I would ever want from a girl and is no longer a bully. Throughout that time I kept our relationship a secret from Anne and our family, aside from dropping little hints that Andrea's changed. The only people who knew were our closest friends. Then when I was confident I really wanted to be with Andrea, I told my parents first, who were shocked but were willing to meet her, then and who told me she'd disown me if I brought Andrea home. I didn't take her seriously since I did so much for her and thought she could put her feelings aside just this one time. We set up a date for Andrea to meet my family, and aside from not showing up, it went really well and my parents warmed up to her. So everything was going well until one day Anne went off on me, said some truly awful things and threatened to go no contact with me and my parents if I didn't break up with Andrea, and they kept her out of our house. No matter how much I begged her to give Andrea a chance, she kept bashing my relationship. Our parents took her side and I had enough of the BS, so I told them they could accept my relationship or I'd distance myself from them. Mom took the first option and my dad and Anne took the second. I don't see or talk to Anne anymore, barely see my dad, and my mom's constantly heartbroken that our family will never be whole again, all because Anne is too selfish to accept that people can change. Fuck Anna, I really don't need her. I have Andrea. My greedy coworker kept asking me for free food, so I yelled at him. I have a coworker who is quite young, in his 20s. He's new to the job and makes more money than I do, which is okay. I've helped him get used to the job since he's new. He's not very friendly, but that's fine too. He didn't bother me until recently. Here's the strange part. He often asks for my food in a joking way, but I find it rude. I bring my coffee from home to work every day, and he once commented on how good it smelled. I told him where to buy it. It's just regular grocery store coffee. He then said, well, if you wanted to bring me a small bag of it, I wouldn't say no. I laughed it off, but he keeps saying it multiple times a week. He kept saying it in a way where it seemed like he was joking, but he would repeat it multiple times a week. He never misses an opportunity to remind me to bring him food, and if he sees me eating, he will bother me for my entire meal. He asks about my lunch and says, if you can't finish it, I'll eat it. He even asks for cooking advice and then asks me to cook for him. Once, I brought cookies for everyone, and he took 5 before anyone else could have any. I thought this was remarkably selfish, and at this point, I started to get pissed off with him. Recently, we were discussing our salaries with another coworker, and I told him how much I make. He was surprised that I make so little. I told him to remember that the next time he asked for something. But even after that, he asked what I was making for dinner and if I could bring some in for him the next day. I finally snapped at him and yelled at him to stop, that I had had enough of his stupid jokes and I wasn't his mommy, so I wouldn't be bringing him anything, ever. He got an attitude with me that day and still hasn't stopped his little jokes. In fact, he's been doing it more often, as if he is purposely trying to annoy me. This is getting on my nerves. What should I say to him if he keeps doing this? I'd like some suggestions, ranging from reasonable to a bit funny. I thought I had forgiven my husband for cheating on me, until I fell in love with someone else. I, 34F, have been with my husband Will, 38M, for 10 years, married for 7. We have a child, 5M. 4 years ago I found out he was having an affair, a story as old as time itself. The classic signs were all there, distant, long work hours, smiling at his phone, etc. So one day after he went to bed I checked his phone, found out it was the fresh graduate, 23F at that time, that joined his company the previous year. From the messages it was PA and EA that has been going on for at least 6 months. The cheap hotel banging was hard to read about, but what was worse was how emotionally connected he was, calling each other nicknames, doing things that were historically our things. No, it was too much. I took all screenshots, packed bags for my kid, and I called my brother to come pick me up from my parents' house, and when my brother was here woke my husband to tell him I was leaving. By the end of the week I had already had a consultation with the lawyer. There was no going back. For the next 2 years, yes, years not months, my husband tried relentlessly to win me back. He did everything and he did everything right. Begging and groveling, said he was blinded by the attention he got, cut off the girl immediately, switched jobs within 2 months, booked counseling sessions that he begged me to attend, made progress in counseling, read books, you name it. He was visiting our son almost every day after work and weekends. When he wasn't here he would text me where he was, also shared his location. I saw genuine and consistent change and remorse in him, and after 6 months me and the baby moved back with him. Things did get better and better every day for the next 1.5 years until we reached the normal state that we are at now. I can't explain why, or what it is, but during the last 4 years I feel like I've been in an emotional limbo. Things are normal, as I said, we go on dates, have intercourse, have family, just like before, but I feel emotionally detached from him, like I can't be all in. I know I have forgiven him and now I don't even think about the affair every day, neither do I have any reason to doubt him anymore, but I also don't feel this love for him like before. He seems to think we are back to our old relationship, but I feel like we are very friendly roommates that smile and wave and just go with the flow. I thought this was my new reality, and I was never gonna get the old me back, until I met Jake. I met Jake, 35M, about a year ago on our local subreddit. He posted about a hobby we share and I commented. It's a rather uncommon hobby, so not many people have interest in it. Then DM, chit chat and such. The first month was nothing but talk of this hobby. Then we slowly started to get to know each other. He is a widower and I told him I have a family. We met a few times for coffee after work and for the hobby. Yes, my husband knows that I am meeting this new friend Jake for the hobby. He doesn't know I found Jake on Reddit. I don't know how to word it properly, but I am finally happy and back to my old self, and the reason for that is Jake. We have fallen for each other over the last year, and have confessed our feelings for each other. I never thought I would feel this way again, and yet here I am. We have never done anything physical, only met in public, but this is certainly emotional infidelity towards my husband. On one hand, I understand that emotions are not rational and it is my husband's doing that we are here, but on the other hand, I feel extremely guilty because he has been trying so hard to reconcile. I also feel so angry at him these days for putting me in this position. Also, in the middle of all this, I am in pain that I can't be with Jake and am shackled to my married life. Jake says he understands my duties as a mother and would never ask me to do anything I didn't want to, but he was there for me and my kid if I wanted. I don't know why I made this post, maybe to clear my head. What do I do? Where do I go from here? Do I torpedo my marriage and all the hard work we have put into reconciliation to pursue a fling with someone I just met that may or may not turn into anything serious? Do I wipe him out and go back to whatever limbo of a marriage that I have left and just suck it up?
After 30 years of being open, my family's restaurant is closing tonight. My family has owned a fine dining Italian restaurant since before I was born. Most of my childhood memories are in that restaurant. Every day after school I go do my homework at the bar. I follow my dad around the kitchen and help with little things like making salads, and I will never forget making my first pizza at 4 years old. Whenever it stormed really bad and we lost power, my family would go and sleep on the floor in the dining room. It was always a safe space. It was always somewhere for us to go, something for us to do, something that needed constant watering and attention. It's been my family's livelihood for my entire existence. It kept my belly full as well as my heart. It's my father's lifelong work and it's made me respect him so much after 30 years of being there to cook for 14+ hours a day. I don't know who I'd be without this restaurant. It shaped me in ways that I couldn't possibly explain over a Reddit post. It's made me confident, brave, not scared of a little heat, and I've built incredible relationships with the staff that I've been so lucky to work with for so long. I started taking it seriously when I was about 15. I was a biz girl at first. And then I was a hostess. And when I got a little older I became a server. I wasn't very good at that one, especially after spilling red wine on one too many older women and embarrassing myself beyond comparison. I realized at 18 or so, that like my father, I was a cook. I'm 24 now and I've been cooking alongside my dad every day since I realized I had a knack for it. It's been beautiful, exhausting, exhilarating, very mentally and emotionally taxing, just an overall whirlwind of emotions every single day. I even made the crazy decision to drop out of college to run the restaurant full-time. I love it though. I love working with my family. I love making people happy and seeing them enjoy the food we work so hard to make. Tonight is our last shift ever. Things were going so well over the holidays this past winter, but ever since COVID hit, it's been a different story. We had to close to the public for 3 months. And since we've been open with limited occupancy, we're not pulling in those great numbers that we once were. We can no longer afford the rent at our building and had to make the tough decision to close our doors for good. But besides that, it's time. My parents are in their 60s. My dad can't do it anymore. His health is starting to drastically fail because of all the years being constantly on his feet. And he doesn't want me to have the same life that he did, never being able to give any part of life besides work real attention. My mom and dad are ready to retire and I don't blame them. I'm nervous about tonight. After all these years, this very well might be the last restaurant shift I ever work. I don't know what the future holds for me, but I don't think I have any interest in continuing my cooking career elsewhere. I decided that without the restaurant, there's not much keeping me in our town, so in October I'm going to take a big risk and move across the country. I'm terrified. I've been terrified every day leading up to today. It's hard to imagine what life is going to be like for me after we close our doors tonight. I've just never known anything else. I thought it might feel good to tell this story to some faceless strangers. If you read this far, thank you. Please continue to support your locally owned restaurants. The families who own them put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into running them. Tip your servers well. Thank the chefs if you run into them. Enjoy good food for the rest of your life and eat it with passion. Mother-in-law is a witch and tries to curse me. My mother-in-law is a witch. She calls herself a witch and does these weird curses on people. She's just always been kinda strange, you know? Lately, she's been getting on my nerves with her behavior. A while back, she even tried to put a spell on our wedding. Apparently, she tried to curse us or something. Can you believe it? But that was ages ago, and my husband and I didn't talk to her much since she lived far away. So, my husband and I have a different kind of relationship. We're pretty adventurous and like to try out new things. But hey, it's our business, and we don't need anyone judging us. The important thing here is that we both have other partners. Last November, out of the blue, my mother-in-law moves really close to us without even giving us a heads up. We found out she was just around the corner after she'd settled in her new house. It's like she suddenly had all this time on her hands and started paying way too much attention to us. Over time, she saw some of our friends who came over to hang out. Somehow, she got it all mixed up and thought they were all my special friends and not my husband's. Then, around Christmas, she decides to drop a bomb on my husband. She tells him she thinks I'm cheating on him. Can you believe that? He didn't take her seriously and brushed it off, but I don't think she got the message. And here comes the crazy part. She actually made a fake Facebook profile using photos of some random guy she knows. She pretended to be him and started messaging me. After a while, she even suggested getting together for some, well, you know, fun stuff. The thing is, he's not a bad-looking dude, and even my husband agrees. So, I agreed to meet up with this guy at Starbucks. But guess what? When we showed up, there she was, my mother-in-law, holding printouts of all our messages. She started waving them around, accusing me of cheating on my husband, and we ended up having this huge argument right there in Starbucks. Eventually, the staff had to ask her to leave because she was causing such a scene. We took the argument outside, and it got really loud. My husband and I decided just to leave, and we drove off, leaving her there still yelling. It was just ridiculous. That was just a week ago, and now she's called again. This time, she's saying she's going to put some kind of curse on me to make sure I stay away from her son and stop ruining his life. Can you believe the nerve? I don't even know how to engage with this crazy lady.
What was your I don't get paid enough for this moment at work? Psycho camp director lost her shit on all of the lifeguards because we said we weren't coming back next summer. Reality was we all had legit reasons. I was going to take summer courses to graduate early. Another guard was moving to university and was going to work in that city. Another guard got offered a head guard spot at a camp near her house. Etc. Nothing that said we hated the current camp, just other things going on. We were told in a group meeting if we weren't happy there we could leave and she would find other guards. Following Friday she calls us all in to tell us what a great job we are doing and how happy everyone is going to the lake. Tuesday after that she calls us in individually to tell us we aren't working hard enough and she sees us slacking off all the time. Lunchtime Tuesday all the guards walked into her office, told her to go F herself in front of the owner of the camp, and we all piled into my Ford Focus and went for a beer. Went home that night to message from camp owner asking us to give him a call back. We all chatted and realized he had called all of us. Called him the following day, told him what went down. He asked us to reconsider and that he would give us a $5 an hour raise and report directly to him. We discussed it and agreed on the condition that Psycho director apologized to us at a collective staff meeting. She refused and had a tantrum. Camp owner fired her on the spot, escorted her off the property and we opened the lake back up. F you Barb.
My boyfriend lied to me about having cancer. Yet another crazy ex-boyfriend story to share. I once dated this guy and really started to like him. Young love. I was in Spain with my best friend and her family for a surfing competition, my BFF sister. I remember I received a lot of missed calls the one day, more than 40 missed calls to be precise, and countless of messages and voice notes from my then boyfriend. Naturally I was quite startled and he expressed that he has cancer. Oh my lord, I thought. The messages were so disturbingly detailed that I was quite traumatized. He was expressing that he had a few days left to live and if I wanted to say goodbye, I should return to Cape Town. So I did. I left my friend's family and returned to Cape Town. My ex-boyfriend gave me the name of the hospital with the room number and floor. As I entered the hospital, emotional and just stressed out of my mind, I got into a serious fight with the nursing staff who told me they never heard of my boyfriend and that he wasn't there. I naturally tried phoning and texting my then boyfriend who just ignored all my messages. Eventually I got hold of his mom who told me that he doesn't have cancer, he had a tummy bug. Can you believe that this man lied about cancer? I obviously believed him when he told me BQAs who in their right mind would lie about such a thing. Anyway, turns out this guy was a little crazy. He gave me countless of artwork whilst we were dating and once I broke up with him BQAs of the cancer scam, he begged me for all of his paintings back, only for me to realize that he stole them from a matric art examination. Gosh, even though I laugh now about how ridiculous this was, it really wasn't funny at the time. Just a warning, the truth will always come out. And if you need a little bit of extra attention, rather tell your girlfriend instead of making up a disease. My brother hates my boyfriend and asked me to choose. I'm 17, female, and my brother, 24 male, hates my boyfriend, 17. I started dating my boyfriend this year, and we've been together for 7 months. He's the nicest and sweetest person I know. He's always there when I need him, he's comforting and respectful. Everyone in my family gets along with him except my brother. My brother despises him, and I'm not sure why. There will be times where my brother would purposefully lock him out of our house or compare himself to him. My boyfriend has been nothing but nice to my brother, and my brother has just been cruel. Me and my boyfriend were friends prior to dating, and my boyfriend and him were getting along just fine, but as soon as we started dating, he started acting weird. When my boyfriend would hug me, my brother would look disgusted and get upset and storm out of the house. Mind you, my brother is married, and even his wife has taken notice of his behavior. There are times where my brother would tell me that he will always come before any man in my life and that my boyfriend is just temporary, and I should just keep him for enjoyment. The final breaking point was when we were all sitting down for Thanksgiving, and out of nowhere, my brother brought up the fact that my boyfriend's mom is a single parent. He started asking if his mom takes food stamps or if she worked more than one job. My dad told my brother to stop and tried to change the convo. At that point, I had enough and told him to apologize before me and my boyfriend got up and left. Once we left, he started blowing up my phone, saying that no man will love me as much as he loves me and that he can't believe I would up and leave. He said if I don't break up with him, that he will have no choice but to leave my life forever. He then said that if he was my boyfriend, he wouldn't have just left, that he would have stood his ground. I don't know what to think or what to do. At this point, I'm over my brother. I love my boyfriend, and I know he loves me, and I don't want to leave him. But at the same time, my brother is my blood, and I don't want to abandon him. Update 12 days later, I ended up speaking to my brother about the whole thing. Explained to him how the way he reacted was unnecessary. He told me that he was sorry and that he was just really upset about me leaving. Even had my dad sit in on the conversation, and my dad told him that he needs to respect my privacy and vice versa. My brother agreed and kept saying he was sorry and that he was just looking out for me and, that bull crap he always says to try and make himself look better. Not even a day later, I texted my boyfriend good morning. No response. I texted him hey later in the day, still no response. I didn't get a response until 1 a.m., and it was basically a paragraph of him saying that he thinks we should break up and that I, as in me, needs to focus on better things. I tried to ask him if we can speak in person about this, he didn't reply, and now we're on winter break so I can't even see him at school. I haven't told anybody we broke up, not even my parents, but my brother all of a sudden seems happier and has been coming around the house more often. I honestly despise my brother and genuinely can't stand him. I've tried texting my boyfriend, well now ex, begging him to at least just call me? Like even if you don't want to see me in person at least just call me and tell me why? I feel terrible, and I can't even blame him.
I think my sick partner is poisoning me. I, 29, think my 30, is poisoning me, but I am not sure and I don't know what to do. I am a generally fit, active, and healthy 29-year-old who gets sick only maybe once a year, and lasts at most 2 days before I'm back on my feet. I've been with my significant other for over a year now, and we haven't had any major fights at all. However, starting 5 months ago or so, my significant other has been sending me food that either he or his family has prepared, and also various supplements, which I take from time to time. Call me crazy, but I've noticed my health started to decline. I'm less able to work out, and I've gotten sick frequently. Note that I've been cooking and eating my own food all this time. I don't eat deliveries or whatnot, and have not fallen sick. Every time I eat the food they bring me, I notice a sick sort of smile on his face. I used to think that it was because I was eating the food he made, but it can't be a coincidence that I get sick every time. Also, note that he and his family can cook. This isn't one of those amateurish cooking food poisoning kind of things. My significant other has access to both hospital supplies and agricultural supplies. His family has versatile professions. I took a stool test one time I got sick, but that came back normal, so I thought that I might just be overthinking it. I have absolutely no way of knowing for sure. Nonetheless, I have gotten sick again, and I ordered some delivery. The next day, I felt much better. However, my brought over some more food the next day, which I ate, and, lo and behold, I got a bit sicker the next day. As for the motive, I do not know at all. I'm not parasitic and shower them with gifts regularly to acknowledge and reciprocate their goodwill. I'm keeping them from finding out my suspicions, but yeah, how should I proceed? I miss my annoying wife. My wife is doing way better now. Still not her full self, but she started being a bit annoying. After some of your advice, I decided to wait a bit to prank her, until I thought she was ready for a prank. After like 1 month one morning I woke up before her, got out of bed, went to her side of the bed and started fast kissing her cheeks waiting for her to wake up. When she woke up she looked at me a bit confused and asked what I was doing. I just got on top of her, took her in for a hug and started kissing her more. After like 10 seconds I stopped. I didn't want to lay on her very much to not make her feel unsafe or uncomfortable. Got up and yelled I love you. Her reaction was very good. She was giggling the whole time I was kissing her, and after I yelled she said that she loves me too. I then told her I'm going to make some coffee for both of us. And you guessed it, I salted her coffee. She again reacted very well and spit it all out and started laughing hysterically. In my opinion that made her a bit better, but she was understandably still very sad. But her first prank was unexpected and very funny. After like another month of me doing little pranks on her, mostly yelling I love you and very rarely salt in her coffee, she took revenge, and so she did. I don't know what she got, but it was some type of chocolate cake that when you poke it with a knife it explodes in your face. I didn't know what the occasion for cake was, but hey, it was cake, so I didn't suspect anything. And so I tried cutting it up and it exploded on my face. My wife was of course laughing very hard, and I just got the rest of the cake that was on the table and slapped it, gently of course, not a full-on slap, on her face, and so we were both covered in chocolate cake. We were laughing so hard we both fell on the floor, and after a few minutes we started hugging each other on the floor and stayed like that for like an hour. I don't know why we did that instead of cleaning ourselves up first, but it was amazing smiles now. She's still very sad, but she started being annoying again. Not that much though, and she's overall way better than she was when I first posted here. But the biggest surprise is that she is pregnant with a girl. Yes, she is going to be a mother, and I'm going to be a father. We are both so excited, and we already know the name of our precious daughter. My wife asked me, a bit scared, if we can name our daughter her mother's name, and I of course said yes, because firstly it's my wife's most important person's name, or second after our daughter, and secondly, it's a very pretty name. My wife is excited to be a mother, but very upset that her mother isn't going to meet her first grandbaby. I'm glad she is way better now than 7 months ago, and I'm very proud of her because she's a very strong woman and a very amazing wife, and I don't doubt that she's going to be an even more amazing mother.
What is the scariest, strangest, most unexplainable thing that has happened to you while home alone? One night I had forgotten to lock my apartment door and woke up in the middle of the night. My bedroom door was about 2 feet from my front door. As you walked into the apartment, first a big dog ran by, then a person. Holy shit, I was so scared and I screeched, "Who is it?" A man said, "It's Doug." As I was thinking to myself, who the F is Doug? He said, "Oh, shit." He turned around to go back out the front door saying sorry. I asked, "Didn't you have a dog with you?" He said, "Oh, yeah, hey, come on." He left, His dog ran out after him and I locked my front door. I managed to lock myself out of my house on my birthday during a tornado while trying to bring my cats to the basement for safety. I later found out that the tornado was approximately a couple miles or less from me at that exact time. The sky was green and it got weirdly calm, and then I could hear what sounded like a train coming before I found an unlocked window to climb through. Wild times.
How do people know if they're in love or just deeply infatuated? Sometimes it can be hard to tell. The emotional roller coaster of starting a new romance can leave you feeling confused and uncertain. Hormones and chemicals in the body are sending mixed signals, and it can leave you uncertain of your real feelings. I can offer a few tips that might help you sort out some of the feelings and be more aware of what makes up a love relationship versus just that infatuation that isn't strong enough to become more. There is nothing wrong with things heating up quickly, but you do need to make sure the relationship is well balanced. You should not have intimacy on every date. You should make sure that some of the time you are spending with the other person is about bonding on an emotional and mental level as well as a physical level. If you don't have that connection in all areas, then the relationship won't be a good fit overall. It is easy to go to a movie and then go home for some intimacy and end the date. It is harder to truly talk to each other and have meaningful conversations about yourselves and learn about each other. As for the emotions in a relationship, it is actually normal for feelings to change. When you first start dating, everything is new and exciting, and there is a fire to the feelings that you are having for the other person. Your hormones are racing and you are getting extra dopamine from the new relationship. You want to be with them. This is completely normal, but it doesn't last. The longer any couple is together, the more you learn about them. That new and exciting starts to change. It is because the hormones and dopamine are changing back to normal levels. It doesn't always mean you don't have love. It doesn't always mean that you are falling out of love or were never in love. What it does mean is that your relationship is evolving into the next stage, and this is when those emotional and mental connections help you decide if you want to be with this person. This is when it is time to do a reality check and make sure this other person is making you happy. You need to have a full connection on all levels of physical, emotional, and mental to develop a long-lasting relationship. When that fire of new and exciting starts to die down, you can make choices with your mind instead of your hormones. If you expect love to always include that fire, then you are always going to be jumping from one relationship to another looking for that high that you are getting from the hormones and dopamine of being in a new relationship. I have been married for 36 years. We are still very much in love on every level. We can spend hours together and never get tired of each other. If we are apart, we miss the other one. We still say I love you every morning and every night before bed, and sometimes several times per day. We can talk for hours about anything and everything or nothing at all. We connect on every level and always have. It doesn't matter what we are doing or where we are at, we want to be together. But it isn't that fire of a new relationship. It is the comfort of being with someone you know and trust because you built that relationship on all levels. When you find someone that you just want to be in the same room with, no matter what you are doing, and you can talk for hours, that is the kind of connection that makes a lasting relationship.
I took my ex-friend to the mental hospital. So I, 19F, was friends with Jane, 19F, who is unmedicated bipolar 2. We had a falling out over a misunderstanding on her end. She invited herself to the function because she thought she was invited, but I invited her to hang out after that function. Several PPL did not want her there. She said maybe and would rearrange her schedule to accommodate us, but then I invited my boyfriend who did not want her there, so I rescinded the invite. She blew up at me and I told her she was being mean. I shut my phone off for the night to discover she blocked me. I blocked her back. I spoke with Jane after she wanted to talk and had nothing left to say to her. Our friendship already had problems and she hasn't tried to contact me since. She pretty much accepted what she did wrong on her end and acknowledged how her own mental health struggles played a part in why she acted confrontational and how she would work on them, then apologized. Her roommates are my friends and have been giving me a play-by-play of the aftermath, and apparently Jane's not doing too good. She went into a depressive episode and it spilled onto her roommates. She was really jealous of the fact I was hanging out with her roommates without her. I get it because it's her friend group, but she's reaping what she's sowing. They eventually talked it out. Now Jane says she's talking to a new psychiatrist and therapist. The issue, I asked her one roommate how her mental health was and she said she was fine, but it was Jane's business. I was concerned for her since she used to be a friend, so me and my mom told her to tell her we'd personally drive her to the mental hospital 2 hours away. It was much better than the one in our hometown. Our mental hospital dehumanized PPL, my other friend was admitted and it traumatized her. I said this out of a place of concern, but Jane messaged me on Discord accusing me of insulting her. She said the offer was completely disrespectful. Especially coming from someone who tanked her MH in the first place. She said having your mom personally tote me to the loony bin is wild, but she completely misconstrued what I said.
Boyfriend is upset that my brother didn't let him spend the night with me when I was very drunk and passed out. I've just turned 18 and can now legally drink where we live, so my brother invited me, my new boyfriend and a few friends and cousins over to hang out and maybe get drunk. I drank way more than I should have. People left one by one and I was only there with my brother and boyfriend. I don't remember much except that I woke up in his spare bedroom in the morning and my boyfriend wasn't there. Apparently I passed out on the couch. My brother took me to the bedroom to sleep, My boyfriend wanted to spend the night there, but my brother said no. My brother says he didn't let him stay because he doesn't know him and he didn't know if we've been intimate, and I was completely incapacitated and couldn't consent to anything intimate, so he felt like it's safer to not allow him spend the night there with me. Boyfriend insisted that he didn't want to be intimate, just cuddling. He got confrontational with my brother and accused him of being controlling and said he has no right to decide if he can spend the night with me, which my brother told him I can decide. You're not gonna spend another minute in my house. Boyfriend said he'll leave but he'll take me with him. Brother stood in his way and told him to either leave or deal with the police. Then my boyfriend left. So here we are. My brother thinks I'm dating a complete jerk. My boyfriend thinks I have a whole controlling brother, and I've spent the last 2 days regretting drinking that much. My own feeling is that it would have been okay if my boyfriend spent the night with me in the bed, but absolutely not okay to be intimate. We haven't been intimate yet, been dating for less than a month. I understand why my brother acted in a protective way. I was drunk, and letting a guy who is interested in me spend the night with me is just unnecessary risk. I also understand my boyfriend's disappointment, but he should have respected my brother in his own house. So now my boyfriend has demanded an apology from my brother for being mistrusted and for interfering in his relationship, and my brother had banned him from future events and parties at his place for being a jerk. My boyfriend would also like me to demand an apology on my own behalf from my brother for him acting the way he did, by assuming he can decide who I can or can't spend the night with. I'm in this mess and I need to make this disappear if I am to have some peace and make everything normal again with my relationship and family. What do I say to my boyfriend? I think he needs to drop this and move on, and over time show to my family that his behavior on the night wasn't who he really is, to earn their trust. Update: based on the advice of you guys, my parents and my brother, I broke up with my boyfriend, so I asked my boyfriend what he expected to happen that night if he was allowed to spend the night with me. He repeatedly said nothing but let slip that maybe he hoped we'd be intimate in the morning. So you guys were right. He wanted to do it that night with me, and he probably would have if he was allowed to spend the night with me. Even the thought of it gives me a lot of stress. I always knew SA is a danger a lot of women and men face, but never felt it so close to me. Maybe because I've always been with people I trust, I don't know. I never thought it could happen so easily to me. It would have happened to me that night if my brother hadn't protected me the way he did. I'm going to be a lot more careful about my own safety from now on. I won't be as trusting to strangers, and I'm now learning my drinking limits so that I won't overdo it, especially where I might be vulnerable. My brother also told me to never accept a drink from the people I don't 100% trust. Thanks, Reddit.
What is the dumbest thing you've ever done for absolutely no reason? Spring break in Cancun at 20 years old. Came back to the hotel completely wasted at 3 a.m. but wanted to stay up. I decided to go for a swim in the ocean. I was alone on the beach, and absolutely no one was around. So I set out, feeling refreshed and independent and powerful as I took to the nighttime sea. I'm a good swimmer, but as I'm treading water, my drunken mind realizes the hotel looks smaller. Probably nothing. I continue with my self-absorbed thoughts and I'm enjoying the feel of my body swaying in the open water. Still treading, pondering life, or more likely thinking about stupid shit like a girl I couldn't impress that night, I noticed the hotel looked really small. At this point, I knew I was in trouble, but luckily the intoxication actually kept me from panicking. I set in a steady swim for sure. But it didn't work so well. After 5 minutes I didn't think I was any closer. I didn't know about riptides. So I continued to swim, even harder, really fighting the waves and challenging with my entire being. I was in good enough condition, luckily, that this heavy exertion slowly brought me closer. Maybe I moved laterally and got away from the riptide? I kept going, desperate, fighting. At one point, I remember feeling defiant and screaming at the ocean. In my mind, I'm boldly proclaiming my defiance of the natural world, showing that I can beat it. In reality, an idiot struggling in the water, wailing like a drunken simpleton. Eventually, exhausted beyond what I thought possible, I swam myself to shore. Even in my intoxicated state, as I lay on my back in the wet sand, gasping and trying to find air, staring up at the stars, hearing the sea that had nearly defeated me continue whispering calmly as if nothing happened, I could appreciate the opportunity I'd been given to go on living, and not be such a complete idiot who deserved a Darwinian death. Needless to say, that night that I fought the ocean stayed with me for life. Today I effed up by hooking up with a guy that's dating another girl. For reference, I am a female first-year college student at a coastal college in the eastern US. I was walking downtown one Friday night with my friends after leaving a music venue, drunk, when I make eye contact with a guy, but for an abnormally long amount of time. I mean at least 10 seconds. I notice that he's cute and perhaps a little too old for me, but I'm a little drunk and I'm feeling bold, so I turn around and walk up to him. I asked him for his Snapchat, because that's just an easy way to talk to someone, and he mutters to me, "I'm from Germany, though." I tell him I don't mind and I'd like to get to know him. He says okay, and we exchange Snapchats. For a few days, he did not reach out, so I figured he wasn't interested. Okay, whatever. But he eventually reached out and we began talking frequently. We tell each other all about each other, where he tells me he is studying in Germany to be a doctor, how he is on a tour of the US, about his hopes and dreams, family, and I do the same. I start to feel a sense of closeness to him before we even met up again. One night he asked me to hang out with him and his friends before he left for a new city to visit in America. I happily say yes. However, he is 23, and so are all of his friends, so he suggests bar hopping. Long story short, I get my fake taken, get extremely embarrassed, but he decides to come back to my dorm with me. We talk for a while and eventually we have sex, some of the best, might I add, and we did many times, but irrelevant. We end up spending the whole night telling each other so much about our lives and being extremely vulnerable with each other. He had to leave the next morning for his flight for the next US city on his list, so he leaves. I am left at home, a little sad that it came to an end, but content, realizing that this was a one-night thing and I shouldn't become obsessed. I'm not delusional, and knew he probably did this kind of stuff with a bunch of girls. He is subjectively a very attractive man, and with that accent, I know other girls ate that up, too, but still I was happy about it. I expected him to not reach out much while on his tour, and he didn't for a lot of it. But he would occasionally send me pictures of Vegas or San Francisco or Hollywood Boulevard, or text and ask how I'm doing. He then told me that he is going to make a detour from his plans and come back to my town to see me. Obviously this is very exciting for me, and I say yes, and we make arrangements for him to come stay the night. He flies back to me and comes over. He greeted me with a necklace that he bought me while he was gone, matching his, and put it on me. We again talk about our lives in depths, our futures, and his tour. We have sex again, multiple times, and we ended up staying up until like 4 in the morning, just talking. Couldn't tell you everything we discussed, but it was very intimate, and he is an extremely romantic person. Like when we woke up, he watched me get ready telling me how beautiful I am and how upset he is to say goodbye, kissing me in between every step of my morning routine. Right before he left he pulled me back into bed, and told me to never settle for less, that whoever ends up with me is an extremely lucky man, and that I am beautiful, intelligent, funny, kind, etc. He told me he wants to one day fly me out to his home and show me where he lives. It was a very sweet moment for me. I started crying because I don't think anyone's ever told me such nice things. I know though, that men will say anything to get in your pants, but this felt real at least to some degree. We hug and kiss, and tell each other, have a great life. And he walked away. Later that day, he removed me as a friend from his Snapchat. I am pretty upset, but again, realized this was not going to be a long-term situation, so I was okay. I brushed it off as a cool meetup with an awesome person that I was lucky to meet, once in a lifetime person that I'll never forget. This goes on for about a month, neither of us reaching out. Fast forward to last night, some guy adds me by search on Snapchat, not a name I recognize, but I accept it anyways. He sends me a snap, and to my shock, it was the German, saying that he misses me so much. I ask him why he is contacting me on a Snapchat of a person's name that isn't his. He then sends me paragraphs explaining that this was a fake Snapchat, that he has a long-term girlfriend back in Germany, that they aren't doing well and he wasn't sure if he wanted to really be with her. He told me that spending time with me was really great and refreshing for him, that he will never forget me and I was more special to him than I realize, but he doesn't want her to find out, so he will be talking to me on this Snapchat because he doesn't want to lose contact. I didn't say much, I just told him that while I feel the same way, that what he did was wrong and I wasn't sure what to say. He said, I know, sleep well and when you wake up we will talk about this more. I'm not sure what much there is to talk about. There is the Atlantic Ocean and a girlfriend dividing us, not like we are going to get married. But he was very special to me and I am ashamed to admit that I do want to talk to him. I love the plot. He blocked me on Instagram, assuming so I cannot find the girlfriend. I will probably stop talking to him and write this off as a crazy thing that happened to me in college, but I am sad. I feel guilty and terrible for the other girl in Germany. But he was one of the most memorable people I have ever met.
Redditors, who was the nastiest person you encountered while flying? This was one of the rudest interactions I've ever had on a flight, and I think back to it often. It happened right after I was in a bad car crash which made everything much worse. My partner and I were on a long flight with a cheap airline during the holidays. The day before our flight was the day of our awful car crash. Our car got hit at an intersection. My partner was okay, just a bit shaken, but I had a broken collarbone and a hurt ankle. We were far from home, visiting family, and we couldn't stay longer to recover. I just wanted to get back home. We called the airline beforehand to ask for a wheelchair and early boarding because of my injuries. My ankle was swollen and wrapped up, so I couldn't walk on it. My arm was in a sling because of the broken collarbone. Crutches weren't an option. Flying like this was already really hard. The airline and airport staff were nice. This was a very cheap airline, so they choose your seats unless you pay extra. Due to our situation, we had specific seats near the front of the plane. We were among the first to get on the plane. I used a wheelchair until we got to the plane's door, so everyone could see I was injured. The next group to board were families with young kids. A woman and her 2 young children sat in the row across from us. A man said he had the window seat in our row. I struggled to move with help from my partner, so he could sit down. Then, everyone else got on the plane. It was crowded, and there were no empty seats. The woman across from us had trouble with her kids, and the man in the window seat was her husband, trying to talk to her. Here's where the problem began. While we were waiting for the plane to take off, the man turned to my partner, pointed at the woman and kids across from us, and said, "That's my family. Switch seats with me so we can sit together." Remember, I was in the aisle seat, the one he wanted. My arm was in a sling, my swollen ankle was wrapped up, and my leg stretched into the aisle. On this cheap airline, there was very little legroom, so I needed the aisle seat for my leg due to the swelling and in case I needed to go to the restroom. I looked and felt like I'd been hit by a truck because, well, I had been just 16 hours ago. My partner looked at the man, really confused about why he couldn't see the situation. He said, "No, dude, she needs that seat." The man got frustrated, pointed at his family again, and insisted, "No, look. That is my family, switch seats with me so we can sit together." My partner said no again and pointed to my clearly injured body. He explained that these were our assigned seats and we weren't going to switch. The man looked like he wanted to argue, but my partner can be really intimidating when he wants to. I'd never seen him act tough with anyone, but the look in his eyes said he was very close to losing his patience. The man calmed down a bit, sighed loudly and annoyed, and rolled his eyes. He called over a flight attendant to make his case, but she told him the same thing: these were our assigned seats. He even tried to get her to move his whole family somewhere else, but the flight was full. The flight attendant asked me if I was okay with my seat, and I said yes. Then she left. I still can't believe how entitled that man was. He could have paid a bit more to choose his family's seats early, but he expected a clearly injured person to move for him. He was not happy with our decision and gave us angry looks for the rest of the flight.
I'm the miracle golden child, and my sister ruined my life because of it. I have competed with my sister since I can remember. I was a baby born after a miscarriage our mom had, so my parents were very happy and shifted their attention away from my sister and onto me. I took some joy in this by knowing that I was favored over my sister due to unfair circumstances. I did try to outdo her a lot, but I also tried to connect with her growing up because I considered her a really cool person. However, she always seemed uninterested. I would tell my parents this, which only made them chew her out for hurting my feelings. That only caused her to hate me more. When I turned 15, I completely stopped engaging with her. My parents didn't push for us to be friends either and kept their attention on me. A few years later, I started going through my character development arc and started wanting to be independent. I also started really regretting competing with my sister and taking joy in being a miracle child when I was little. By this point, I got myself into a good college and my parents offered to pay for the tuition. Since I wanted to move out of their house, they offered to pay my new rent too. When my sister heard of my parents offering to pay for me if I moved out, she was understandably mad as they had refused to pay for anything and told her she needed to learn responsibility by paying for her own things. She blew up at my parents, but mostly at me, for stealing away the attention of our parents her entire life and making her miserable. I tried to explain that I agreed that they were bad parents and that she deserved better, but she just told me to shut my mouth and that she didn't need my sympathy. My parents forced her to apologize and threatened to cut contact if she didn't. I agree that she was harsh, but I understand how frustrated she must have felt her whole life, so I don't hold it against her. Since she didn't have much of a support system other than my parents, she sent me a super long apology over text and tried to mend things. Though it was obvious she only did it just because she was forced to. During the first few months of college I ended up meeting a guy named John and we started dating shortly after. Everything just clicked and it seemed like he knew my every thought. At my 20th birthday party, I introduced him to my family and everything seemed to go well. I kept my family and John separate because my parents were always super nosy and my sister seemed extremely judgmental when I would bring company. This time around she was super friendly though. Looking back, my sister was definitely a little too touchy with him, but I chalked it up to her just wanting to overcompensate to mend our relationship further. After I graduated, John ended up proposing and I said yes as I was head over heels in love. We decided on having a wedding once we had secured good paying jobs and things seemed to be perfect between us. Flash forward to 3 weeks ago and I got the most gut-wrenching message of my life. It was from my sister telling me that she was pregnant and it was John's. In addition to that, she sent screenshots of messages and explicit images between the two. They professed their love for each other multiple times and John said that my sister was the best he'd ever had in his life, directly telling her she was better in bed than me. It had been going on for the majority of the years we'd been together. To say I sobbed my eyes out would be an insulting understatement. I asked her how she could do this to me and she replied, "Now you know how it feels to get your whole life ripped away from you. He loves me more and I'll make sure he leaves your sorry butt for me and our baby. Go cry to our parents and see if I care." And then blocked me before I could respond. The man I used to call my fiancé came home hours later from work and saw me crying. He begged to know what was wrong and tried to comfort me, but I blew up at him. And kicked him out. He admitted to the affair over text and said he loved me but loved my sister too and had to be there for his child, so the engagement is off. His brother came and took all his stuff and he hasn't even given me an apology for any of this. I've been crying for basically a month straight and all I want to do is hurt the living crap out of my sister, but I know I would go to jail, especially since she's pregnant. I thought that things were finally looking up, but then she decided to betray me, and for what? You'd think an almost 30-year-old woman would seek therapy or talk to me directly about her resentment, but no, she had to sabotage my life for the sake of hers being crap. I can't even feel any sympathy for her anymore and I just want to go away forever. I've had extremely alarming thoughts, but I've just resorted to locking myself in my room all day since I work remotely and it's calmed down in the last few days. My sister unblocks me occasionally to keep rubbing it in my face that he chose her over me, sending pictures of them together and her baby bump. I've already blocked her to make sure she leaves me alone. She's a grown woman gloating like a child. If he's willing to cheat on me for so long, I feel incredibly bad for their baby but definitely not for her. I haven't told my parents yet and I'm unsure how to even go about it. I told my long-term girlfriend that I pay for intimacy. A little bit of background: I, 26M, and my girlfriend, 24F, have been together for about 4 years. She's from an upper middle class family. An only child, so always taken care of. She's very financially responsible and not bratty or anything and extremely caring. So the entire time we have been together, my financial situation wasn't the best, until now. My girlfriend knew this but never made me feel insecure about it. She would just pay for things without making a big deal out of them. For example, if she noticed I needed something around the house or if there was something she thought would make my life comfortable, she would just order for me on Amazon and be low-key about it so that I don't feel like a charity case or something. She would often order food from her phone and pay for it when she came over. We are both Asian, so we often would have a friendly fight over who pays, but she would often already have paid. Like things would arrive and she would have already paid for them. She never demanded any gifts from me or anything, even though I know she likes things. She would get me really thoughtful gifts for my birthdays and anniversaries, and TBH, my gifts for her were not the best, but she would always be thankful and happy. She was used to going to nice places but would still be excited about going to budget places with me and be genuinely excited. Cut to now. I started a business a while ago and it's doing really well now and I'm financially comfortable now. I like to get my girlfriend things because I can finally afford to spoil her, little gifts every now and then. Honestly, anything she might like. I also like taking her on little shopping trips. Again, she's financially smart and not very keen on high-end fashion, so it's not like she shops in luxury stores when I take her shopping. She buys a few things. Also worth noting, anything I buy for her, she is capable of buying herself. She has a well-paying job, has no debts because parents paid for her uni. She doesn't expect me to buy anything, but I'm happy that I'm in a position now that I can buy her things that make her happy. Now on to my today I effed up moment. I took my girlfriend shopping. She got a pair of sneakers and a dress or two. Nothing over the top. On our way home we were talking about that viral street video from Japan where men and women say they don't consider it cheating if a man has sex with a sex worker. My girlfriend mentioned she could never pay for sex and asked me if I ever would. I jokingly said I already do and glanced at the shopping bags. Her smile instantly disappeared. I sensed her entire mood and vibe change. I felt really bad for saying that and apologized immediately because honestly, it was a really stupid joke. She said it was fine and we moved on. Now it's been a couple of weeks since that incident and I've noticed that my girlfriend hasn't used any of the stuff I bought her that day. Usually she wears the things I buy her within the next few days and points out, "Look, I'm wearing the insert item, you got me." She says it in a really cute way and seeing her happy like that makes me really happy. But she hasn't touched the sneakers or the clothes we bought together that day. They are still in their bags. And I think it's because of that stupid joke I made. I also noticed she had some packages get delivered a few days ago. Usually she shows me what she's buying and I offer to buy it for her. She doesn't always accept my offer, but she still shows me the things she's ordering. But this time, nothing. I can't believe I messed up like this. I think I really hurt her feelings. And the bonus stupid part is that the things I buy her are a small fraction of what she owns/buys anyway. It's not like I fund her lifestyle or something like that. She spent years getting me things and never said a thing about any of it, and I just had to make that ill-timed joke. I don't know how to bring this up with her. I really didn't mean what I said to her, but I know she's an overthinker and probably thinks I meant it.
My boyfriend burned my late husband's beanie. It happened last night. I'm still shaken up by what he did and couldn't even sleep. We've met when I moved into another place. He has always been sweet and kind, but his behavior would change at the mention of my late husband. He'd suddenly become upset and anxious. Yesterday he asked if we could go out, but I refused because I was looking at my late husband's stuff. I told him about the beanie that I got my husband with his name on it that he wore at the hospital till the day he passed away. My boyfriend started a fight with me over it, saying I refused to go out because the beanie made me feel upset. Then he sneaked it home with him and burned it. I found out after I noticed it was lost and went to get it back from him knowing he took it. It was horrible. I started screaming at him, then went home. I kept crying the whole drive home and couldn't sleep the night. This beanie meant so much to me and he saw it as distraction. He tried calling me this morning but I have not responded.